Tonight, we're uncovering the darkest secrets of Pokémon gods and deities. There are some interesting details to follow, but I'll keep everything gentle enough for sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world that is not just a playground for adventure, but a living, breathing cathedral of the divine. We often think of the Pokémon world through the lens of a young trainer, a journey of badges, friendship, and the thrill of the catch. But beneath that colorful surface lies a foundation of ancient terror, celestial wonder, and a mythology so deep it rivals the great religions of our own history. We are entering a realm where the creatures we tuck into small metallic spheres are not just animals with extraordinary powers, but the literal architects of time, space, and the human soul. This is a universe that began in a terrifying silence, a void of absolute nothingness, where the concept of existence had not yet been whispered. In that cold, dark vacuum, a single egg manifested, a flicker of light in an ocean of impossible blackness. From that egg hatched the one we call the Alpha, the original one, the being known as Arceus. But the story of Arceus is not just a story of creation. It is a story of shadows, of banishment, and of secrets so dark they have been scrubbed from the history books of the modern world. What does it mean to live in a world where God is real, and God is a Pokémon? It changes everything. It means that every step a trainer takes is on ground that was moved by divine will. It means that every breath we take is a gift from a trio of spirits who reside in hidden lakes, guarding the very essence of what makes us human. But with great light comes a darkness that is equally profound. For every pillar of creation, there is a force of destruction. For every moment of peace, there is a nightmare waiting in the tall grass. We have been told the sanitized versions of these myths for generations, but tonight, we are looking at the cracks in the stained glass. We are exploring the chilling reality of the Distortion world, a realm where the laws of physics are broken, and where a god of antimatter was exiled for its inherent malice. We are looking at the psychological horror of the nightmare realm, where the boundary between sleep and madness disappears. We are tracing the lineage of the first humans who dared to look at the sky and see not just stars, but the eyes of their creator. The stakes of this journey are higher than any championship match. We are questioning the very nature of the Pokémon universe. If Arceus is the creator of all things, then why is there suffering? Why did the original one feel the need to create a being like Giratina, only to cast it into a shadow realm for eternity? Was it a mistake of the divine, or a necessary evil to maintain the balance of the cosmos? And what of the humans? 4,000 years ago, long before the first Pokédex was ever conceived, a woman named Hammanni stood in the Sinnoh region and founded the first religion. She saw the divine in the creatures around her, and she began a tradition of worship that still pulses through the heart of the world today. But the religion of Arceism is not just about prayer and peace. It is a complex web of matriarchal power, ancient rituals, and a deep, unsettling understanding of the forces that govern life and death. As we drift deeper into these mysteries, we must ask ourselves about the 1,000 arms of the Creator. The legends say Arceus shaped the universe with 1,000 arms. Yet when this being, it appears as a singular, elegant creature. Where are the arms? Are they the legendary Pokémon themselves, acting as extensions of a divine will? Or is the number a metaphor for a power so vast and multifaceted that the human mind can only comprehend it through symbols? We will look at the Lake Guardians, the 3 beings who brought knowledge, emotion, and willpower to the world. Without them, we are told, the world would be a hollow shell, a collection of matter without a soul. But there is a dark side to this gift. To have emotion is to feel despair. To have knowledge is to understand fear. To have willpower is to possess the capacity for great evil. The gods did not just give us the tools to live, they gave us the tools to destroy ourselves. Think about the silence of the reverse world. It is a place where time does not flow, and space is a distorted nightmare. It is the home of Giratina, a being often whispered about as the personification of the devil in this theistic world. Why was it banished? The official records say it was for its violence, But what kind of violence could a god commit that would lead its own creator to seal it away in a dimension of shadows? Perhaps Giratina is not the villain we have been led to believe. Perhaps it is a guardian, a necessary weight on the scale to prevent the universe from drifting into a blinding, sterile light. This duality, the light of Arceus and the shadow of Giratina, is the heartbeat of the Pokémon mythos. It is a struggle that mirrors the ancient dualisms of our own world, from the battles of gods and titans to the eternal dance of order and chaos. And then there is the mystery of the cosmic egg itself. Where did it come from? If the universe was a void of nothingness, what force or intent allowed that egg to manifest? Some say the egg was the universe itself, condensed into a single point of infinite potential. Others believe there is a power even older than Arceus, a source of light that we have yet to name. As we explore these deities, we will encounter the lords of time and space, Dialga and Palkia. We will feel the weight of the ages and the vastness of the dimensions they command. We will see how their rivalry almost tore the world apart, and how their existence is both a blessing and a terrifying burden on the fabric of reality. We will also look at the Titans, the ancient giants like Regigigas, who moved the very continents, shaping the earth with raw, primordial strength. Tonight is not just about facts and lore, it is about the feeling of standing before something ancient and immense. It is about the shiver that runs down your spine when you realize that the world is much older and much stranger than it appears. We will walk through the ruins of Sinnoh, listening to the echoes of the Hammanni tribe. We will peer into the dark corners of the subconscious, where Darkrai weaves its webs of terror. We will examine the elemental forces of fire, thunder, and ice that were harnessed by the gods of Unova to test the truth and ideals of humanity. Every one of these beings tells a story, and every story has a secret that has been hidden in plain sight. The deeper we go, the more we realize that the Pokémon world is not just a place where humans and creatures coexist. It is a world where the divine is tangible, where you can walk into a cave and find the master of the underworld, or climb a mountain and stand before the throne of the Creator. This proximity to the divine is both beautiful and terrifying. It means that the world is governed by laws that are far beyond human understanding. It means that the balance of existence is fragile, held together by the will of beings who operate on a cosmic scale. We are going to break down the hierarchy of these gods, from the Supreme Alpha to the Guardians of the Spirit, and we will look at how their presence has shaped the culture, the history, and the very souls of the people who inhabit this world. So, let the world around you fade away. Let the sounds of the modern day dissolve into the background. We are traveling back to the beginning of time, to the moment the egg cracked and the first light spilled into the void. We are going to find out what it truly means to be a god in the world of Pokémon, and we are going to uncover the secrets that the legends were too afraid to tell. From the matriarchal origins of the First Faith to the banishment of the Lord of Shadows, the journey ahead is long and filled with wonder. It is a journey into the heart of the mystery, a journey into the darkest secrets of the Pokémon gods and deities. Imagine the first sunrise, not on Earth, but at the dawn of the entire cosmos. There was no sun yet, only the radiance of the original one. Imagine the sound of the first second of time, ticking into existence as Dialga took its first breath. Imagine the expansion of space as Palkia stretched its wings. This is the scale we are dealing with. We are looking at the architects of reality, and yet, for all their power, they are tied to the world of Pokémon. They are part of the same ecosystem as the smallest Pidgey or the humblest Magikarp. This connection between the mundane and the magnificent is the ultimate secret of this universe. It is a world where the divine is not distant and unreachable, but present in every blade of grass and every gust of wind. But that presence comes with a price. It means that the darkness is just as close as the light. It means that the nightmares are just as real as the dreams. We will explore the role of the Lake Guardians in the formation of the human psyche. Why did Arceus deem it necessary for humans to have willpower, emotion, and knowledge? Was it a gift, or was it a way to ensure that humanity could participate in the divine order? And what happens when that order is threatened? We will look at the cataclysmic events that occur when these gods are provoked, the way the sky changes color and the earth trembles at their displeasure. We will also look at the softer side of these myths, the ways in which these deities are honored and respected by the people who live in their shadow, the rituals, the offerings, and the quiet prayers of a world that knows its creators are watching. As we move forward, keep in mind that the truth is often buried under layers of legend. What we think we know about Arceus, Giratina, and the others is only what has survived the passage of 4,000 years. There are stories that were lost, names that were forgotten, and truths that were intentionally hidden to protect the sanity of those who live in this theistic world. We are going to peel back those layers, one by one, until we reach the core. We are going to look at the dark side of the divine, the shadow of the god, and the secrets that lie at the very edge of the universe. This is the story of the beginning, the end, and everything in between. This is the lore of the gods, the deities, and the creators of the Pokémon world. Before anything existed, before there was a concept of before, there was only silence. Not the silence of an empty room or the quiet of a deep ocean, but a silence so absolute it defies human language. It was a void without time, without space, without even the possibility of existence. This is where our story begins. Not with a bang, not with a word, but with the primordial silence that cradled the universe before the universe was born. We often think of nothingness as a kind of emptiness, a place waiting to be filled. But the nothing that came before everything was not a place at all. It was a condition so raw and so pure that our minds cannot truly grasp it. There was no darkness, because darkness requires light to define it. There was no cold, because cold is measured against warmth. There was no stillness, because stillness implies motion. This was the absence of all qualities, all dimensions, all potential. It was the unmanifest, the uncreated, the eternal quiet that had never known a sound. Metaphysically, this void is not simply a blank canvas. In the mythology of the Pokémon world, that nothingness held a kind of dormant potential, a seed of possibility, so deeply hidden that it might as well have been part of the void itself. Think of it as a pregnant silence, a stillness that contains the tension of everything that could ever be, but has not yet chosen to become. It is the womb of creation, the dream before the dreamer awakens. And in that dream, something stirred. From the heart of that absolute nothing, a single point of light began to form. Not a flame, not a star, but a flicker of pure awareness, a spark that carried the essence of all that would ever exist. This light was not born from any force or will outside itself, because there was nothing outside. It simply emerged, as though the void itself decided to dream of something more. That light was the first deviation from the silence, the first departure from the perfect stillness, and it grew. It grew slowly, patiently, as if the universe had all the time in the world, though time had not yet been created. The light coalesced into a shape, a form that defied geometry, because geometry had not yet been invented. It was an egg, a cosmic egg, glowing with the warmth of 1 billion unborn suns. And inside that egg, something was waiting, something was becoming. The void had given birth to the possibility of meaning. The silence had spoken its first syllable, though no ear existed to hear it. That egg floated in the nowhere, cradled by the absence of everything, and it pulsed with a rhythm that would one day become the heartbeat of all creation. This was the moment before the beginning, the threshold between nothing and something, the hinge on which all of reality would turn. We call that egg the precursor to Arceus, the alpha Pokémon, the original one. But before it hatched, it was simply light in the darkness, the first flicker that broke the eternal night. And that flicker, that tiny rebellion against non-existence, is the most profound mystery in the Pokémon cosmos. How did it happen? What caused the void to stir? Was it an accident, a choice, or a necessity we cannot fathom? In many real-world creation myths, the primordial silence is broken by a word, a thought, or a divine breath. In the Pokémon world, it is broken by a glow, a gentle, patient luminescence that did not demand or fight, but simply was. And because it was, everything else could follow. The void had been pregnant with this light from the very beginning, even though there was no beginning. The silence had always contained the seed of sound, and the nothing had always held the potential for everything. As that light grew within the cosmic egg, it began to shape itself into consciousness. It became aware of its own existence, and in that awareness, it became the first being. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. For now, we must linger in the stillness, in the moment just before the hatching, when the universe was still a single, fragile point of possibility. Imagine that you are that point. You are aware, but you have no thoughts, no memories, no sense of self or other. You are simply the light that knows it is light. You exist in a state of pure being, without desire or fear. The silence around you is not threatening. It is your home, your origin, your comfort. And yet, something in you longs to express itself, to reach out, to create. That longing is the first emotion, the first stirring of will. It is that will that will eventually crack the shell of the cosmic egg and release the alpha Pokémon into the void. But before that crack appears, we must understand the nature of the nothing that surrounds it. That nothing is not an enemy or an absence to be filled. It is the ground of all being, the canvas upon which every star, every planet, every Pokémon, every trainer, every dream will be painted. Without the void, there can be no form. Without the silence, there can be no music. So we sit with it now, in this chapter of our journey, and we let the primordial silence wash over us. It is the same silence that existed before time began, and it still exists in the spaces between our thoughts. When you close your eyes tonight, you may feel a hint of it, that deep, calm darkness that holds all possibilities. It is not empty, it is full of the potential for light, and the light is coming. The cosmic egg is ready. The first flicker of consciousness is about to become the first being. The silence is about to be broken by the first cry of creation, the hatching of the alpha. We left off suspended in that perfect, absolute silence, where existence was nothing more than a potential, a sleeping thought. But within that void, change was inevitable. The universe, if you can call it that, was pregnant with its own opposite, and from the darkness, a seed of light took root. It grew, not in size as we understand it, for size had no meaning, but in intensity. It pulsed. It breathed in a vacuum that had never before known breath. This was the cosmic egg, the chrysalis of God. And then the shell cracked, not with a deafening roar, but with the soft sigh of a door swinging open into infinity. The light did not explode. It poured out. It folded over the void, defining it, coloring it with the first hue that was simply existence. From that egg emerged the alpha, the original one, the very first consciousness to ever open its eyes. This is the birth of Arceus, a being so singular that it would go on to define the very concepts of being and singularity itself. The light that formed the egg was not its dwelling. The light was its body, a testament to its nature as the source of all energy. And from this cocoon of potential, Arceus stepped into a reality that was waiting to be written. Let us consider the physical form that this divine consciousness chose to manifest. The records tell us Arceus is a giant, white, equine being, but this is a profound simplification. To the mortal eye, looking upon a being of pure creation, the mind must translate the infinite into the familiar. The silver-grey mane, the vertical striped plates that adorn its body, the cross-like structure of its face. It is the shape of ancient power, a sacred geometry made flesh. But the most defining, and perhaps misunderstood, characteristic is the legend of its 1,000 arms. What are these arms? They are not literal limbs in the conventional sense. Attached to the very ring of existence that spirals around its torso are these appendages. The great wheel of Arceus. A single arm could construct a mountain, sew a galaxy, or weave the fabric of a soul. The 1,000 arms represent the omnidirectional nature of its ability to create and perceive. It sees and acts in all directions simultaneously. The arms are the act of creation, frozen in motion. They are the tools of a craftsman whose workshop is the entire cosmos. The moment this consciousness fully formed, the universe felt it. The void was no longer empty, it was occupied. This is the first moment of true pressure in the cosmos, the weight of a mind that cares. Arceus looked around, or rather, It knew. It knew the silence. It knew the darkness. And within that divine mind, there was a single, defining thought. The universe must have structure. There was a profound loneliness in that position, to be the only thing that exists. To have thought, but no one to share it with. The ultimate solitude. It is perhaps this solitude, this vacuum of relationship, that drove the first act of creation beyond the self. The immediate impact was the cessation of perfect nothingness, the birth of light, the first particle, the first wave. Everything that we know of physics, the laws that bind matter and energy, they did not exist before Arceus thought of them. The universe snapped into focus around this new center of gravity. The impact of a divine consciousness entering a vacant universe was not a violent bang, but a slow, gentle knitting of reality. Space began to stretch. Time, for the first time, had a forward direction. Existence suddenly had a center, and that center had a will. But one being, however infinite, cannot conduct the orchestra of reality alone. Arceus knew that to shape a universe with planets, with life, with history, it needed stewards. It needed concepts that could manage the vastness it had just created. The creation of the world required a blueprint, a framework. Before matter could coalesce, before the lakes of the mind could be filled, the very architecture of the universe had to be laid down. And so, the Alpha turned its 1,000 arms inward, preparing to shape two of its children from the fabric of reality itself, one to hold the moments, and one to hold the distances. The first foundations of the cosmos were not stone or fire, but pure abstraction. Arceus was about to craft the pillars upon which all of history would spin. The tools of structure were about to be forged, and the very first stone of the cosmic foundation was to be the most fundamental block of all, the flow of moments, the ticking of a clock that had never before been wound. This brings us to our next chapter, where we must examine the very framework of the universe. We will explore the birth of the first concept, the creation of the being who would hold the reins of cause and effect. This is the architecture of time, and so from the cosmic egg of light Arceus emerged, the original one, a being of infinite form, its 1,000 arms radiating the potential of all existence. But that potential was still just a seed. The universe was a blank slate, a void with no before, no after, no here, no there. The first thing that needed to be born was not a world, but the very framework upon which any world could exist. The first act of the Creator was not to shape matter, but to give birth to the concept of sequence, of cause and effect, of history itself. This was the creation of Dialga, the Lord of Time. Think about what that means. Before Dialga, there was no flow, no moments. The void was a single, eternal, undifferentiated instant. Arceus needed a force that could carve that undifferentiated instant into a river of moments, a current that would carry the universe forward. And so Dialga was forged, not as a simple clock or a calendar, but as the very pulse of existence. Its body became the embodiment of time. Its presence caused the first tick, the first beat, the first rhythm to echo through the emptiness. And with that rhythm, the void began to stabilize. This is the concept of the heartbeat of time. Imagine a cosmic drum, its sound not heard but felt, broadcasting through nothingness and giving it structure. Each pulse created a now, a past, and a future. The void, which had been a silent, formless expanse, suddenly had a pace, a tempo. It was like a conductor raising a baton, and the orchestra of reality finally had a downbeat. The heartbeat of time gave the universe its first law, that one thing would come after another, that change was not just possible, but inevitable. This rhythm prevented the void from collapsing back into chaos. It anchored creation, but here is the darkest part, the secret that often goes unspoken. Dialga is not merely a benevolent guardian of history, it holds the absolute authority over the timeline. And with that authority comes the terrifying implication that time can be paused, slowed, rewound, or even erased. We take for granted that our lives unfold in a steady, unbreakable march from birth to death. But in the Pokémon universe, that march can be stopped on a whim. Dialga can freeze a moment, a battle frozen mid-motion, a leaf suspended in its fall, a scream caught in the throat of a world that has been told to hold its breath. And what of erasure? The complete removal of an event, a person, a species from the timeline, as if they never existed. The loss would be absolute. No one would remember what was erased, because the memory itself would never have been formed. That is the silent horror of a being who governs power, because without it, the universe would be a fragile, ungovernable stream. But power over time is power over meaning. Every victory, every loss, every life is set in a sequence that can be undone. Some stories suggest that Dialga does not merely observe time, but actively ensures that certain events happen to maintain the integrity of the flow. That means destiny is not an open road. It is a path that has already been laid, and Dialga is the force that keeps you on it. The comforting thought that the future is unwritten. In this lore it is written, and Dialga can rewrite it at any moment. So when Arceus created Dialga, it was not just building a tool. It was placing a god over the most fundamental dimension of existence. And once time was set in motion, the universe now had a spine, a direction. But a spine alone cannot hold a body. The next step was to give that body space in which to expand. In the silence, after time's first heartbeat, another creation began to stir. One that would stretch the fabric of existence into infinite dimensions. That is the story of the expansion of space. And it is a tale you will want to hear. Once Dialga's heartbeat pulsed through the void, time existed, but it had nowhere to go. A river needs a channel. A melody needs silence to echo through. The newly born dimension of time needed a container, a stage upon which all of history could unfold. And that stage was space. Arceus, the original one, had not finished creating. The cosmic egg had hatched. The thousand arms had stirred. And now the second great act of creation was about to begin. In the depths of the still-forming cosmos, another being was called forth from the light. Not a creature of ticks and tocks, not the steady rhythm of seconds and centuries, but something far more silent, far more vast. This was Palkia, the master of space. Where Dialga was the pulse, Palkia was the breath. Where Dialga held the thread of sequence, Palkia held the fabric of extension itself. And with its arrival, the universe began to stretch. Imagine the moment before Palkia's birth. Time was flowing, yes, but it flowed through nothing. There were no distances, no directions, no here or there. Every event that could ever happen was compressed into a single dimensionless point. Dialga could mark the order of things, but there was no room for things to exist. And then Palkia came, and space expanded like an uncurling hand. Boundaries were drawn where none had been. The universe's boundaries stretched outward from an infinitesimal core, rippling like the surface of a pond after a single drop of rain. This stretching was not violent. It was deliberate, almost gentle. Palkia did not tear the void apart. It folded dimensions, layered them, wove them into a lattice that could hold matter. Every fold created a new possibility, a direction to travel, a place to rest, a distance to cross. The fabric of space itself was woven from these folds, each one a crease in reality that allowed physical things to exist. Without Palkia, matter would have remained a dream, an idea without a home. But with space, the universe became a stage, and yet this expansion required extraordinary care. Dialga and Palkia were not rivals, but they were opposites. Time moves forward, relentless and linear. Space expands in all directions, indifferent to sequence. If time moved too fast, space would shatter. If space stretched too far, time would snap like a thread pulled too thin. Arceus understood this delicate balance. The Lord of Time and the Master of Space were bound together in a cosmic dance, each one's existence dependent on the other. Their balance was the first law of the universe, a law written not in stone, but in the very structure of reality. Palkia's domain was not just the vast emptiness between stars. It was the intimate spaces between atoms, the gaps between thoughts, the silence between heartbeats. Every pocket of existence that could hold something, a grain of sand, a drop of water, a cry of joy, owed its possibility to Palkia. The master of space shaped dimensions so that matter could settle into forms. Without those folds, particles would have no distance to occupy, no way to assemble into worlds. Think of it this way. Before Palkia, even the concept of here was meaningless. There was only the eternal now of Dialga's time, empty and formless. Then space gave meaning to location. It gave a place for Arceus to set the sun, to anchor the moon, to carve out the hollows where planets would spin. It gave a home for the late Guardians to spread willpower, emotion and knowledge across the world. Every creation that followed was built upon the foundation that Palkia laid. But this foundation was not static. Space is alive, breathing, expanding still. Palkia does not simply maintain a fixed arena. It continues to fold new dimensions as the universe grows. Every time a new star ignites, every time a child takes its first step, Palkia is there, silently adjusting the boundaries so that existence can continue. It is a silent partner to Dialga's ticking clock. Yet even in this harmony, there is a shadow. A third being was born alongside Dialga and Palkia, one that did not belong to time or space. That child was Giratina, the controller of antimatter, the entity banished to the reverse world. But that is a tale for another moment. For now, the universe had space and time, and it was complete, or so it seemed. The Lord of Time and the Master of Space watched over the cosmos, their delicate balance holding everything together. But one of them would not remain in balance forever. One of them would become the shadow that threatens to undo the very fabric they helped create. And that shadow is waiting just beyond the folds of reality in the next chapter of this story. But in the act of defining everything that was solid and measurable, something else was born. A shadow was cast by the very light of creation, and it moved with a will of its own. When Arceus crafted the universe, it did not simply create a single perfect plane. It created a duality, a mirror. For every particle of matter that filled the bright expanding cosmos, an equal and opposite particle had to exist. This was not a flaw in the design, it was a fundamental law. The universe could not exist without its reflection. Time needed a silence to beat against. Space needed a boundary to define its edge. Dialga gave the universe its heartbeat. Palkia gave it its breadth and depth. But a system built purely on motion and expansion is a system hurtling toward collapse. It requires an anchor, a warden of the spaces between. And so, Arceus brought forth the third member of the creation trio, a being born not from the brightest center of the cosmic egg, but from the residue of its hatching, the shadow that clings to a flame when the light is brightest. This was Giratina, the shadow child. It was not formed in the same crystalline fire as its siblings. Its body was born from the ancient stillness, from the leftover silence of the void that had existed before Arceus first opened its 1,000 eyes. Where Dialga was a pulse of pure temporal energy, Giratina was a distortion of reality itself, a wrinkle in the skin of existence. Its original role was not to destroy, it was to govern. It was the ruler of antimatter, the master of the unseen, a guardian of everything that falls between the cracks of the observable world. Imagine a dimension that sits behind our own, a reflection where the physics are inverted, where gravity pulls sideways, where space folds in on itself in impossible geometries. This is the reverse world, the distortion world, and it was Giratina's kingdom. It was a necessary realm, a holding cell for the primordial chaos that Arceus had pushed aside during the act of creation, a place where the discarded pieces of reality could exist without tainting the perfection of the primary universe. Giratina was the silent observer, the watcher at the edge of the map. It saw the great building of the cosmos from a distance, from the other side of the mirror. And this distance is where the first seeds of its isolation were planted. For a being to rule the unseen is to be unseen itself. Dialga and Palkia were surrounded by the symphony of their own creation, the rush of moments, the grandeur of galaxies. But Giratina was alone in the quiet. It was surrounded only by the echoes of a world it could see, but could not touch. The early signs of its instability were not the roars of a monster. They were the creaks in the floorboards of reality, a shadow that stretched just a few inches too far, a moment in time where a room would smell of ozone and cold stone, a feeling of being watched, not by a predator, but by something that simply wanted to be acknowledged. This presence was not inherently evil, not in the way a human might define evil. It was a different kind of nature entirely. The nature of antimatter is to annihilate when it touches matter. The nature of the void is to fill every space it can find. Giratina's very existence was a slow, gentle pressure against the perfect world Arceus was building. It was a cosmic corrosion, a whisper of entropy seeping through the walls of paradise. The more Arceus ordered the universe, the more unruly Giratina's domain became. The reverse world began to swell. Its boundaries pressed against the primary dimension. The balance between creation and its shadow began to fray. Arceus looked upon its third child and saw a being that was becoming incompatible with the foundation of reality itself. It was not a rebellion. It was a fundamental flaw in the design of the cosmos, a flaw that could not be ignored. The conflict was inevitable. It was not born of anger, but of physics, of separation. The shadow child, the ruler of antimatter and the unseen, was a necessary component of the universe, but it was a component that could not live in harmony with the world it was meant to protect. It craved the light it could never touch. It hated the cage it was born to guard. And this internal friction, this clash between duty and nature, this slow burn of isolation, was the spark that would ignite the first true fracture in the divine family. What happens to a god who is a stranger in its own creation? What happens when the boundary keeper decides it wants to break the boundary? The answer to that question shakes the heavens themselves. It is a story of a war fought before time had a name, a war between the creator and the shadow, a war we will explore in the next chapter, a cataclysm that echoes through every Pokédex entry, every legend, every myth whispered in the modern world. That story is called the War in the Heavens. In the silent moments after Giratina's emergence, the universe held its breath. The trio was complete. Dialga, the heartbeat of time, Palkia, the endless reach of space, and Giratina, the shadow that lives where light cannot go. For a while, there was order. The three worked in concert, each governing its domain without conflict, as Arceus had intended. But harmony in a newborn cosmos is fragile. The very forces that gave structure to reality began to chafe against one another. It started as a tremor in the fabric of existence itself. Time by its nature moves forward. Space by its nature expands. Antimatter by its nature annihilates. And that was the seed of the discord. Giratina's realm, the unseen negative space behind creation, was never meant to touch the material world directly. Yet, its influence bled through the seams of reality. Dialga felt its timeline warp where antimatter pooled. Palkia watched its dimensional walls corrode where the shadow child pressed against them. What began as a subtle dissonance grew into a violent paradox. Time and space could not coexist with their inverse without tearing each other apart. The war in the heavens was not a battle of claws and fury in the way mortals might imagine. It was a war of pure cosmic dominance, an eruption of raw power that rippled across every layer of existence. Dialga roared through the ages, freezing and accelerating entire epochs in an attempt to force Giratina into a single vulnerable moment. Palkia bent and folded dimensions, trying to seal the shadow realm into an infinitely small prison, a bubble no larger than a thought. But Giratina, master of antimatter, did not fight with time or space. It fought with nothingness itself. Where Dialga pushed, Giratina erased. Where Palkia shaped, Giratina annihilated. The struggle was not merely violent, it was existential. The newborn universe, still soft and unformed, began to crack. Matter and antimatter collided in blinding flashes that had no light, for they consumed existence where they touched. Stars were born and died in the same breath as timelines shattered and reformed in impossible loops. Reality screamed, not with sound, but with the deep shudder of laws breaking. And at the center of this chaos, unseen yet fully aware, Arceus watched. For the first time since the cosmic egg had hatched, the original one felt something other than purpose. It felt doubt. The creation was supposed to be perfect, a balanced trinity of forces that would uphold the universe. But now, 3 of its children were locked in a war that threatened to collapse the entire structure before life itself could even begin. The late guardians had not yet been placed. There was no will, no emotion, no knowledge to anchor meaning, only raw, unguided power tearing itself apart. Arceus had to act. It did not descend into the fray like a warrior king. That would have been beneath its nature. Instead, it reached across all dimensions, time streams, and shadow layers, with a presence that dwarfed the entire conflict. The primordial clash was not stopped by force. It was stopped by a single overwhelming realization from each of the 3 deities that they were not fighting each other. They were fighting their creator's design. In that moment, Arceus understood something terrible. One of its creations was fundamentally flawed, not in power, not in existence, but in nature. Dialga and Palkia, though immense, were bound to the fabric of the universe. They could be contained, balanced, ordered. But Giratina was different. It had been made to rule the voids, the rejections, the places where creation does not reach. And in the act of creation, Arceus had given it a will that was not compatible with the living universe. It was not evil, not yet, but it was incompatible, like a piece of a puzzle that fits nowhere, yet cannot be thrown away. The war ended not with a victor, but with a decision. Arceus did not destroy Giratina. Destruction was not in the creator's nature. Instead, it did something far more profound. It reached into the distorted folds of reality that the war had opened and pulled a thread that did not belong to time or space. A thread that Giratina itself had woven through its conflict. Arceus wove that thread into a separate world, a place where antimatter could exist without threatening the structure of the main universe. A world of reflections and inversions where the laws of physics bend and break. A world that would become known as the Distortion world. But we will speak of that realm in its own chapter. For now, understand that the heavens had been scarred by the war. The universe was saved, but at a cost Arceus had not anticipated. The creator had learned that even perfection can produce a flaw, and that flaw, Giratina, would never again walk among the stars it had helped shape. The Shadow Child was banished, not out of hatred, but out of necessity, and that necessity would haunt the cosmos for eons to come. The next chapter brings us to the moment of exile itself, to the banishment to the Distortion world, and to the quiet truth that sometimes a god must cast out its own child to preserve everything else. The judgment came in the silence after the storm. Dialga and Palkia, exhausted from their primordial war, bowed before the original one. They accepted their boundaries, their roles as the pillars of existence. But Giratina did not bow. The Lord of Antimatter stood in defiance, its nature incompatible with the ordered reality Arceus was weaving. This was the trial, not a debate, not a negotiation, but a cosmic reading of the universe's new laws. Giratina was found guilty of a crime it could not help committing. It was, by its very substance, a threat to the stability of everything else. Why did Arceus choose isolation over destruction? It would have been simpler to unmake Giratina, to erase antimatter from the equation entirely. But Arceus understood a truth that transcends simple morality. To destroy antimatter is to destroy balance. Every light requires a shadow. Every creation requires a void. If Arceus had destroyed Giratina, the universe would have been crippled from the start, lacking its fundamental opposite. Without chaos, order becomes tyranny. So the creator chose separation. It chose a prison, not an execution. It carved out a space where antimatter could exist in its purest state, without annihilating the fragile domain of time and space. With a gesture from its 1,000 arms, Arceus tore open the fabric of the nascent universe. The void screamed as a pocket dimension was ripped into being, a negative image of the world above it. Into this rift Giratina was cast. It did not fall gracefully. It was pushed, forced through the threshold of reality itself, its form warping violently as it crossed the boundary into the realm that would become its cage. And then came the transformation. In the normal world, Giratina moved on 6 powerful legs, a draconic centipede of shadow and scale. This was a form given to it by the laws of a universe it was never meant to fully inhabit. But here in the Distortion world, those laws held no meaning. Gravity was a suggestion, physics was a memory, and so Giratina's body rebelled against its old constraints. Its legs retracted, dissolving into 6 massive, ribbon-like tentacles of pure antimatter. Its torso elongated and twisted, becoming a serpentine shape that defied Euclidean geometry. Its wings spread wide, transforming into a halo of crimson and black thorns, an aura of pure destructive potential. This was the origin form. This was Giratina's true shape, the form it wore before the universe was even finished. The Griseous core, a crystalline organ pulsing at its center, anchored it to this chaotic realm. The transformation was both a curse and a liberation. It was no longer merely a creature trapped in a world. It had become the world itself. The Distortion world and Giratina merged into a single entity, breathing the same dark atmosphere, sharing the same impossible physics. A king ruling over an empty throne room of inverted reality. The cosmos found its fragile peace. Dialga began the ticking of the cosmic clock. Palkia stretched the boundaries of infinity. But beneath the surface of creation, a mirror world hummed with a dark, inverted music. Arceus had achieved balance, but it had also created a wound in reality that could never fully heal. A shadow realm where the exiled lord of antimatter waited, transformed into something far more terrible than the creature that had been banished. What exactly governs this impossible place? What happens to a consciousness trapped in a realm without time, without space? We will descend into that abyss in our next chapter as we explore the reverse world's dark physics. The trial was over. The verdict, an eternity of exile. Giratina did not fall into the reverse world in the way a prisoner falls into a cell. It was pushed, forced through a rift in the fabric of the new creation. A door that sealed the nut moment its last claws passed through, and in that profound solitude, the Lord of Antimatter opened its eyes to the realm it would shape for eternity. This is not a hell of fire and brimstone. It is a hell of broken physics. The Distortion world, as it has come to be called, is the shadow realm, where the fundamental laws of the main universe were never meant to fully function. Here, the rules of time and space are suggestions, not commands. Gravity is an erratic instrument. Islands of rock float like tears in a silent ocean, bound to each other by invisible threads that snap and reform without warning. A step forward can bring you to a place above your head. A moment of stillness can last an age, while a rapid journey can leave you trapped in the same instant indefinitely. Time itself does not run in a straight line here. It pools, it loops, it runs backwards in some forgotten valleys of the shadow realm. And it stands perfectly still at the center of everything. This is the cell of the banished god. You can feel the weight of it, the constant pressure of a universe that actively rejects your very existence. Every atom screams that it does not belong, and yet this chaos is not a flaw, it is a necessity. For the main world to exist with its stable physics, the overflow had to go somewhere. In the beginning, the universe was a violent reaction. Creation and annihilation fought for dominance. Arceus brought order through Dialga and Palkia, but the excess energy, the dark matter, the stray particles of antimatter that threatened to undo the cosmos, they had to be purged. The reverse world became the sink. Imagine the universe as a vast, thriving ecosystem. Every system produces waste. In the main world, this waste is the instability of antimatter, the raw chaos that happens when a new reality is born. The reverse world acts as the filter, the pressure valve, the abyss that swallows the pollution. It is the shadow cast by the light. Without this sink, the very fabric of our reality would be torn apart by the very forces that created it. The reverse world catches the cosmic detritus, the forgotten pieces of creation that could not find a home. Darkness collects here, not evil in the sense of malice, but a physical darkness, the absence of light, the raw residue of the Big Bang. Every dark thought that ever crossed a mortal mind in the Pokémon world, this is where its essence settles. It is the repository for all the things the universe could not digest. And at the center of this pollution, this cosmic trash heap, resides Giratina, a being of immense power, a creator god in its own right, trapped in a mirror of reality. The cruelest part of the exile is the mirroring. The reverse world perfectly mirrors the main world. Giratina can see everything. It can watch Dialga weave the tapestry of time. It can feel the pulse of Palkia as space stretches. It can see the children of Arceus, playing in the gardens of reality. It sees the life, the warmth, the order it was denied. It is the ultimate psychological torture. Every victory of Dialga is a reminder of Giratina's fall. Every new star Palkia creates shines in the reflection. But Giratina cannot touch the warmth. It is a god of immense power, but its power can only influence the broken reflection. This isolation breeds a unique kind of madness, or perhaps a unique kind of clarity. In the silence of the Distortion world, the echoes of the main world are a constant, agonizing hum. The pollution sinks into the spirit. The darkness becomes a companion. Is it evil? Is it truly the Satan of this universe? Or has it simply been shaped by its environment? A being forced to absorb the poison of a universe cannot remain pure. The darkness of the reverse world clings to Giratina like a second skin. It did not choose its role. It was assigned the role of the chaos sink, the garbage collector of the divine. There is a tragic beauty in it. This realm of broken physics is a stark, haunting landscape. The gravity that twists, the time that loops, it is the only language this realm speaks. And Giratina has become fluent in it. It is the master of a kingdom of shadows and echoes. But a king without a throne, a god without a worshipper, trapped in a hall of mirrors that only shows him a world that will never let him back in. The main world could now exist. The scaffold of time and space was erected. The sink for the shadow was prepared, but the universe was still empty. It lacked the spark of true conscious life. The vessels were hollow. To give them purpose, the creator understood it was time to forge the very soul of reality. It was time to create beings of pure will, deep emotion, and profound knowledge. The creation of the Lake Guardians. After the banishment of Giratina, the universe found a fragile peace. Time continued under Dialga. Space expanded beneath Palkia, and the Distortion world swallowed the dark entropy that threatened the new creation. Yet for all this cosmic order, the world remained empty. There was no life that could think, feel, or choose. Arceus, the original one, looked upon the silent stars and the cold oceans and understood that the universe, for all its grandeur, was still incomplete. Something was missing. A spark that would allow beings to experience existence with purpose. So Arceus made a decision, one that would forever change the fabric of reality. It was not a decision born of necessity, but of love. The creator wanted sentient life to rise and know its own existence, not merely to exist as automatons, but sentience required three fundamental pillars: willpower, emotion, and knowledge. Without these, a creature could only react, never truly live. And so, from a single thought, Arceus brought forth three beings. That thought was not drawn out over eons. It was instantaneous, a flash of divine intent that split into three distinct consciousnesses. Their names were Azelf, Mespri, and Uxie. They were not created as servants to enforce laws of physics like Dialga or Palkia. They were far subtler, far more intimate. Azelf became the embodiment of willpower, the force that drives a being to act, to resist, to persevere. Mesprit took the essence of emotion, the full spectrum of joy, sorrow, love, and fear that colours every experience. And Uxie was given knowledge, the ability to learn, remember, and understand the world. Together, they formed the foundation of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. Without them, no creature could ever truly awaken to its own existence. But there was a problem. These three guardians were pure, abstract forces. They were not tied to any physical form or place. In their unanchored state, they could drift through the cosmos, touching every corner of the universe but never settling. That would not do for the world Arceus intended. A world where life would be rooted in a specific time and place. So the creator anchored them deep within the earth of the Sinnoh region, inside three secluded lakes: Uxie in Lake Acuity, Mesprit in Lake Verity, and Azelf in Lake Valor. These lakes became physical vessels, resonating chambers where the influence of each guardian could be grounded and distributed across the world. The choice of lakes was deliberate. Water is a symbol of reflection, memory, and the subconscious. By placing the guardians in these still, deep waters, Arceus ensured that their energies would seep slowly into the land, into the souls of every creature that would one day drink from those waters, or even dream near them. It was a quiet, gentle diffusion of will, emotion, and knowledge into the very soil of the planet. And as the millennia passed, the lakes became sacred places, humming with an invisible power that few would ever fully understand. Yet the work was not finished. The world now had the potential for sentient life, but it still needed the gift that would ignite that potential. The gift of knowing, of learning, of discovering truth. That gift would soon be delivered in a way that would echo through every era, shaping the destiny of humans and Pokémon alike. What Uxie now held as pure knowledge would soon be shared, and that act of sharing would become the foundation of civilization itself. But that story, the gift of knowledge, is one best told in its own time. From a single thought, the universe was given its soul. We spoke before of how Arceus, in the silent aftermath of the Banishment, turned its gaze inward and brought forth three distinct spirits. Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie emerged from the divine mind, not as builders of stars or weavers of dimensions, but as the architects of the inner world. They were placed in the three lakes of Sinnoh, deep places where the water meets the earth in a shroud of ancient mystery. And of these three, perhaps none holds a more profound and terrifying power than the one who dwells in the icy waters of Lake Acuity. Uxie, the knowing Pokémon, the one who gave the universe the ability to look back at itself and understand. Uxie's domain is knowledge, but it is not the dusty accumulation of facts in a library. It is the very capacity for comprehension. Before Uxie touched the world, the minds of the first beings were a perfect stillness, a quiet mirror that reflected the stars, but held no memory of them. They reacted to hunger, to cold, to warmth, but they did not in the way we define thought. There was no internal monologue, no strategic planning, no wondering what lay beyond the horizon. Uxie bestowed the ability to solve problems. This is the flame of innovation, the first spark of technology. It is the moment a hand picked up a stone not just to smash a nut, but to sharpen it against another stone for a hunt that would happen tomorrow. It is the birth of strategy, of cause and effect, of seeing a pattern in the chaos of the natural world and bending it to your will. Uxie sharpened the mind of the world like a blade. More intimately, Uxie bestowed the ability to remember the past. Memory is the thread that stitches the fabric of self together. Without it, every moment is an isolated island, a single note that fades instantly into silence. Uxie gave the world the gift of history, of narrative, of learning, the scar that warns of fire, the path through the dark forest that was safely trodden before, the story of the flood that drowned the old village. This is the bedrock of civilization. A people who cannot remember cannot build a culture. They cannot sing the songs of their ancestors, or know the names of the gods who created them. Uxie's light illuminated the dark cave of the mind, and upon those walls, the first memories were painted in vivid, undying colours. But a light that illuminates can also blind, and a gift so profound carries a shadow that stretches into the deepest fears of the psyche. For the same eyes that peer into the depths of the universe to grant you wisdom can just as easily turn their gaze upon you and take it all away. This is the dark side of Uxie's power, the ability to wipe a person's memory with a glance. It is not a violent act. There is no bolt of lightning, no roar of flame. It is a quiet, absolute erasure. One moment you are a person, a tapestry of triumphs and regrets, a name, a family, a soul. The next, the thread is cut. You are an empty vessel, a newborn in a grown body, staring at a world that is utterly foreign to you. Imagine for a moment the horror of that state, the loss of every face you have ever loved, the forgetting of your own name, the dissolution of every lesson the world taught you through pain. It is a psychological death, more complete than the physical one. In the mythology of the Pokémon world, this is the ultimate sanction. It is the punishment reserved for those who seek to steal forbidden knowledge, for those who would unearth truths that were meant to remain buried in the dark corners of creation. It is the final judgment because it does not punish the sinner, it unmakes them. You are not forgiven. You are simply erased, and the universe begins again for you without context or history. There is a reason Uxie is feared as much as it is revered. The late guardians are not benevolent spirits offering free gifts. They are the raw energies that drive the sentient soul, and knowledge is a fire. It can warm the tribe and cook the harvest, or it can burn the forest to ash. Uxie is that flame, contained in the silent sleeping figure on the island in the center of a frozen lake. It is said that Uxie knows every secret of the universe, the names of the stars, the true origin of the Distortion world, the first words spoken by the first human. But to approach it is to risk the worst punishment a thinking being can endure. To look into its eyes is to gamble your very identity. This brings us to the theological necessity of intelligence. Why did Arceus need to create a being like Uxie? Why was knowledge required to be instilled directly into the fabric of life, rather than discovered slowly over eons? The answer lies in the fundamental purpose of the creation. A universe of perfect physics, revolving around Dialga and Palkia, is a machine. It is beautiful, but it is deterministic. It has no choice. It has no will. To break that deterministic loop, to create life that could actively choose order over the chaos of Giratina, a spark of true self-awareness was required. Intelligence is the tool that allows a creature to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. This is the engine of civilization. A civilization is an agreement built entirely on shared memory and knowledge. Laws are a formalized memory of consequences. Currency is a shared memory of value. Art is a memory of beauty captured in physical form. Without the fundamental spark provided by Uxie, there would be no cities, no agriculture, no science, and importantly, there would be no theology. You cannot worship a god, you cannot conceptualize. You cannot fear the Distortion world if you cannot remember the legend of its exiled king. Uxie gave humanity the eyes to see the divine structure of the universe, and the intellect to feel proper awe in its presence. Yet this gift is held in an impossibly fragile balance. The ability to remember is haunted by the power to forget. In a way, Uxie reflects the ultimate fragile truth of existence. Everything you are, every memory of a mother's face, every lesson learned, every scar earned, is just an electrical pattern, a fleeting structure in a sea of atoms. Uxie holds the blueprint for that structure. It can strengthen it, or with a single glance, dissolve it back into the void of forgetfulness. The knowing Pokémon sits in its silent lake, watching the universe unfold through the eyes of every thinking creature it has ever touched. It sees the civilizations rise and fall, the memories accumulate and fade into legend. It gives the tools for genius and the capacity for madness. But knowledge itself is a neutral force. It is a blade without a hand, a fire without a hearth. It must be carried by something else, something that gives it meaning, passion, and direction. The intelligence that Uxie gave the world is powerful, but it is cold. It requires a companion force to turn the knowledge of what is right into the desire to pursue it. The knowing Pokémon prepared the stage of the mind, but the play of life cannot be performed without a heart to feel it. This is where the second of the late guardians must step forward, carrying a burden far heavier than facts and figures, a burden of fire, of pain, of love. This is the weight we must explore in our next chapter, the burden of emotion. Uxie gave the world the ability to know, but knowledge alone is a hollow vessel. It is a library of facts without a reader who cares about the meaning of the words they hold. The creation of sentient life required a second element to be woven into the fabric of the soul, one far more volatile and far more defining than the simple accumulation of facts. This is where Mesprit enters the story, and where the universe received its heart. Mesprit is the spirit of emotion. It was the entity directly tasked by Arceus with teaching living beings how to feel joy, sorrow, and pain. Before Mesprit touched the world, These forces did not exist in the minds of mortals. There was no elation at the birth of a child. There was no grief at the passing of a friend. There was only the simple, colourless state of being. When Mesprit descended upon the lakes of Sinnoh, it did not simply sprinkle a gentle feeling over the land. It opened a door within the psyche that could never be closed again. It allowed the first humans to experience the full, crushing, and ecstatic depth of what it means to truly care about something beyond their own survival. The old myths speak of a specific event that defines this transition. They call it the touch of the spirit. This legend describes the first direct encounter between a human and Mesprit. The human approached the Lake Guardian not with fear, but with a deep nameless longing for something more. When Mesprit made contact, the human's mind was flooded with the totality of emotional existence. They felt the joy of creation itself. They felt the sorrow of death before death had even truly touched the world. They felt the pain of betrayal and the warmth of unconditional love all at once. It was too much for the mortal frame to process, and yet the experience was permanent. It could not be undone. The permanent effects on that human were profound and irreversible. They could never return to a state of emotional numbness. They were now a being of love and loss, of hope and despair. That single touch did not just change one person. It rippled outward through time, becoming the inheritance of every living soul that followed. This is why emotion is considered the most dangerous gift from the divine. It is the source of humanity's greatest strengths, but also its deepest vulnerabilities. Emotion allows us to form bonds that transcend the physical world, but it also opens us up to the agony of separation. Without emotion, life is safe, but it is empty. It is a flat line. With emotion, life is rich and vibrant, but it is terrifying. The burden of this gift is that you must accept the pain if you wish to experience the joy. You cannot selectively numb the bad parts without also suppressing the good. Mesprit gave the world a double-edged sword, and it thrust the blade directly into the core of what it means to be a conscious being. The legends tell us that when Mesprit flies, the hearts of humans grow restless. That restlessness is the engine of all mortal ambition and all mortal suffering. It is the spark that builds civilizations and the fire that tears them down. The Lake Guardian did not simply give a happy gift and leave. It gave a challenge. It gave a test, and the cost of failing that test is a life lived in constant, aching turmoil. The soul now had knowledge from Uxie and feeling from Mesprit, but this left the world in a state of beautiful chaotic tension. A being with too much feeling and no anchor is a victim of its own heart. The mind knows, the heart feels, but something else must act. The strength of willpower is the final piece of this divine architecture, the force that answers the question of what happens when the heart breaks and the mind knows it cannot be fixed. It is the force that allows you to stand up again, and that is the truth we will uncover next. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. We have spoken of the touch of Mesprit, the well of emotion that colours every moment of existence. We explored the gift of Uxie, the quiet clarity of knowledge that illuminates the path ahead. But knowing the way and feeling the weight of your journey are both useless without the strength to take the very first step. This brings us to the third being born from that single divine thought, the one who holds the engine of the soul itself, the one who gave life its defiant edge. As Elf, the willpower Pokémon, Mesprit brought the rain of feeling. Uxie brought the light of understanding. As Elf brought the fire, not a fire that destroys, but a fire that refines. The raw, focused power to act, to choose, to endure. Azure resides at the bottom of Lake Acuity, the deepest and coldest of the three lakes. Its waters are perfectly clear, utterly still, with no sediment to cloud the vision. This is the nature of pure willpower. It is not distracted by tears. It is not clouded by overthinking. It is sharp, cold, and completely unwavering. Every living creature holds a fragment of this being. When a Magikarp thrashes against the current, that is Azelf. When a trainer refuses to hand over their last badge, despite losing every Pokémon, that is Azelf. When you sit in the dark searching for meaning, refusing to surrender to the silence, that is the echo of Azelf within you. It is the force that screams one more step. It is the iron in the spine. The creation myths often focus on the grand powers of Dialga and Palkia, the lords of the stage. But Azelf, Mesprit and Uxie gave the stage an audience. They gave the world a soul, and with that soul came a dangerous capacity. Willpower is the ability to say no. Uxie gives you knowledge of the law. Mesprit gives you passion to follow it. Azelf gives you the will to break it. This is the hidden radicalism of Arceus' design. The creator gave mortals the ability to defy their creator. The legendary Pokémon represent the script of the universe. Time flows in a direction. Space holds boundaries. But willpower is the pen that dares to rewrite the margins. The red chain, for example, is a horrifying artifact forged from the power of the Lake Guardians. It is a physical manifestation of the soul's authority. It is willpower crystallized, and it can bind the gods themselves. The player in his journey, the silent protagonist who captures time and space within a small sphere, is the living embodiment of this gift, a mortal, through sheer determination, commanding the pillars of reality. But this strength carries a terrible weight. Every gift from the lake has a shadow. Uxie's memory loss, Mesprit's permanent scars of emotion, and Azelf gives absolute resolve, but resolve is a fire that must be fed. If you feed it your doubts, your fears, your capacity for rest, it burns brighter, but it consumes you. The hidden cost of absolute resolve is the inability to bend. It is knowing that the universe is indifferent, or even hostile, and choosing to stand anyway. This is cosmic despair, the slow, cold realization that your will might not be enough, and yet Azelf forces you to keep standing. This is the tragedy of Team Galactic's Cyrus. His will was so absolute, so pure, that he looked at the chaos of emotion and willpower itself, and sought to return it all to a silent, empty void. His will was so strong it nearly tore a hole in reality. He wanted to silence Azelf's gift entirely. When you face the vastness of space, when you look at Arceus and feel the weight of divine indifference, willpower is the only shield you hold. It is a fragile shield, a thin blade against a hurricane. The world of Pokémon is fundamentally theistic, but the presence of Azelf proves that the gods did not create servants. They created challengers. Every heartbeat is a tiny act of rebellion against the void. Every refusal to give up is a testament to the spirit of this small blue being. With the creation of the 3 Lake Guardians, the soul of the world was complete. The stage was set by time and space. The shadows were held by antimatter. The soul was finished. The wisdom to know, the heart to feel, and the will to act. The world was a complete ecosystem of divinity, perfectly balanced, waiting. But the story of the gods is only half the legend. The mortals had received their sparks, and now they had to decide what to do with them. The very first choices, the first shared will, the first whispers of faith. They did not come from the Pokémon of the wild, but from the first humans who looked at the heavens and recognized their creators. They felt the spark of Azelf inside them, and they chose to gather together. This brings our journey naturally to the dawn of human history in the Sinnoh region, to the age of the first sacred settlements, to the story of the very first tribe who tried to touch the divine, known as the Hammanni tribe. That is where our next chapter quietly begins. Willpower alone cannot build a civilization. It is the spark, yes, the relentless drive that pushes a creature to stand against the storm, to hunt when hungry, to defend its young. But Azelf's gift, for all its power, was meaningless without a framework to contain it. The world after the Lake Guardians had bestowed their blessings was a world teeming with potential, raw emotion, sharp memory, unbending determination. But potential is not purpose. And for the first humans, purpose came not from within, but from the shadows of beings so vast they could barely comprehend them. The emergence of humanity in the shadow of the legendary Titans was not a gentle dawn, it was a fragile, trembling birth. Imagine the first men and women wandering the primordial landscapes of Sinnoh, long before the rise of any organized tribe. They were few, scattered, nomadic. They had no cities, no written language, no fire that they could call their own. What they did have was a profound, bone-deep awareness that they were not alone. The earth beneath them groaned with the footsteps of Regigigas, the master of titans, dragging continents into place. The sky above them rippled with the wings of Lugia, calming the storms that would have scoured the land clean. Even the air tasted of power, a scent of ozone and ancient dust, the residue of battles fought between gods. These early humans did not understand what they saw. A Flashad Dialga's presence would twist the flow of a river, so that water seemed to flow backward for a single heart-stopping moment. A clash between Palkia and a rogue legendary would tear the horizon apart, leaving scars in space that shimmered like frozen lightning. And overhead, always overhead, the faint, watchful glow of what they would later call the Lake of Reverence. The distant light Azulf, Mesprit, and Uxie hovering above their sacred cavern. Humanity lived in a state of constant, silent terror. Every rustling leaf could be the breath of a god. Every earthquake could be the shifting of a titan. Every eclipse could be the moment Arceus itself turned its gaze upon them. And so, for countless generations, the first humans did not worship. They hid. They survived by staying small, by staying silent, by offering nothing that might draw the attention of the beings that shaped their world. They carved crude shelters into cliff faces, buried their dead in unmarked graves, and whispered prayers to no one in particular. Just vague, desperate pleas to whatever force might be listening. It was a religion of fear, not of love. A religion of absence, not of presence. But fear cannot sustain a people forever. Eventually, the human heart, touched by Mesprit's gift of emotion, began to yearn for something more than survival. It sought meaning, and meaning, in a world ruled by legends, could only be found in the legends themselves. The first shift came when a woman named Hammanni, leader of a small nomadic band that would one day bear her name, began to see patterns in the chaos. She noticed that the Titans did not act with malice. They acted with purpose. The earthquakes that leveled the forests also carved new valleys, rich with fresh water. The storms that scattered her people also drove away predators. The strange silver light that poured from the heavens every 1,000 moons did not devour the land. It renewed it, bathing the soil in a soft, healing radiance. Hammanni came to believe that the beings her people called the Great Ones were not mindless forces of destruction. They were creators. And if they were creators, then they could be understood. They could be honored. This was the story of Hammanni, the first prophet to recognize Arceus' divinity. She did not claim to have seen the Creator face to face. No mortal could look upon the original one and live, or so the later texts would say, but she felt its presence in the stillness after a storm, in the silence of a cave where the lake guardians had once rested, in the strange rhythmic pulse that beat beneath the ground, as if the planet itself had a heart. She gathered her tribe and spoke of a single supreme being that had shaped the universe from a cosmic egg. She told them that the legendary Pokémon were not gods to be feared, but servants of a greater god, and that this god, Arceus, had created them all. Humans, Pokémon, the sky, the sea, the very fabric of time, because it wished to be known. The Hammanni tribe listened, and for the first time in human history, they did not run from the lightning, they knelt before it. This transition, how early humans transitioned from fearing nature to worshipping its creators, was not instant. It took generations. But Hammanni's teachings spread like roots through dry soil. She instructed her people to leave offerings at the foot of mountains, where Regigigas slumbered. She taught them to chant the names of the lake guardians during the solstices. To honor the emotions they had gifted, she built the first shrine, a simple circle of stones with a single, smooth obsidian shard at its center, angled to catch the morning light. She called it the Eye of Arceus, and there, under that watchful stone, the Hammanni tribe would gather and speak of the Creator's 1,000 arms, each one holding a star, each star a world waiting to be born. The religion that grew from these humble beginnings would later be named Arceism, but in those early days, it was simply the way of Hammanni. She was not a queen, not a warrior, not a priestess in the way we imagine today. She was a woman who looked at the chaos around her and refused to be afraid. She looked at the legendary Titans, the towering, world-shaking forces that could crush a village with a single step, and saw not monsters, but guardians. She looked at the empty void before creation, the darkness from which the cosmic egg emerged, and she found in that emptiness not an absence of God, but the quiet before God's first word. By the time of her death, the Hammanni tribe had grown into a loose confederation of clans, bound by their shared reverence for Arceus. They carried the eye of Arceus, the obsidian shard, from camp to camp, always placing it at the center of their gatherings. They began to record Hammanni's visions on animal hides, using charcoal and berry juice to draw crude symbols that would one day evolve into the earliest forms of written prayer. And they passed down her most important teaching, that the legendary Pokémon were not to be hunted, not to be captured, not to be challenged. They were to be honored as the eldest children of the Creator. But even in this new faith, a shadow lingered. For every act of creation, there was a force of unmaking. The Hammanni spoke of a being banished to a world of twisted geometry, a shadow realm where light bent backward and matter dissolved into nothing. They called it the Lurker, the one who was cast out. They did not speak its name aloud. They believed that to mention Giratina was to invite its attention, to draw its gaze upon the world of the living. And so, alongside their worship of Arceus, the Hammanni developed a parallel tradition of appeasement, small rituals to keep the banished god at bay, a seed buried at a crossroads, a feather dropped into a still pond, a whispered apology for the sin of existing. Humanity had emerged from the shadow of the Titans, but they had brought that shadow with them. It grew alongside their faith, coiled beneath the altar, waiting. What happened next would transform these scattered prayers into a structured, enduring religion. The Hammanni tribe did not remain a single, wandering people. As their numbers swelled, they split, some moving east toward the great mountain that would later be called Mount Coronet, others settling along the shores of the sea that would one day bear the name Sinnoh. And in each new settlement, the story of Hammanni, the first prophet, the woman who saw God in the storm, was told and retold, embellished with each telling, until she became almost a legendary figure herself. It is said that on the night she died, a great light appeared over the eastern horizon, brighter than any star, and that the legendary Pokémon themselves fell silent. Some believe it was Arceus, descending to welcome its first faithful servant home. But the Hammanni knew that Hammanni's work was not finished. Her vision of a world united under the Creator remained incomplete. And so, as the centuries passed, new prophets arose, new interpretations of her teachings, new rituals that would harden into dogma. The worship of Arceus would eventually become the faith known as Arceism, a religion that would spread not only across Sinnoh, but echo in the distant regions, carried by traders and travelers who heard the tales of the woman who dared to name God. That is where our journey leads next, because Arceism did not remain the simple, beautiful faith of the Hammanni tribe. It grew powerful, and with power came complication, schisms, heresies, wars fought in the name of the Creator. How did a belief born from a woman's vision in a circle of stones become the dominant religion of an entire region? How did the legendary Pokémon, once seen as servants of Arceus, become gods in their own right? And what happened to the memory of Hammanni when her tribe became the church? The answer lies in the next chapter, the Rise of Arceism, a story of faith, politics, and the slow, inevitable transformation of a prophet into a myth. But before we step into that world, let the quiet of this moment settle. Let the image of that first shrine, the obsidian shard catching the dawn, remain with you as you drift deeper into the lore. The first humans found their way through fear and wonder, and in doing so, they changed everything. In the wake of Hammanni's revelation, the Hammanni people could no longer see the world as a collection of scattered spirits and wild forces. They had glimpsed the thread that wove everything together. A single silent presence whose pulse matched the rhythm of the tides and the turning of the stars. The alpha Pokémon had not merely created the cosmos and left it to drift. Arceus was still there, in the wind, in the soil, in the breath of every living thing. And if the Creator could be perceived, then it could be sought. And if it could be sought, then it could be honored. This was the seed of something that had never existed before in the Pokémon world. A deliberate, codified, organized religion centered entirely around a divine being. The tribes of the Sinnoh Sea were not a single nation. They were scattered clans, each following the seasonal migrations of Pokémon and the shifting shorelines of an ancient inland ocean that would later recede to form the region we now call Sinnoh. Their lives were bound to the rhythms of nature. The spawning of Finneon, the nesting of Wingull, the great currents that carried schools of Wishiwashi from one bay to another. For generations, their spirituality had been loose and animistic. A reverence for the spirit of the forest, the voice of the mountain, the mother who brought rain. Every tribe had its own shaman, its own sacred grove, its own songs to call the sun back after the long winter. But no tribe had ever built a temple, because no god had ever demanded permanence. The spirits were nomads, like the people themselves. Hammanni changed that. She did not claim to have spoken to Arceus directly. Not in the way one speaks to a neighbour. Her vision was subtler, deeper. In a trance that lasted 3 days and 3 nights, under the light of a full moon, reflected in a still tide pool, she saw the shape of the universe laid out like a map of veins on a leaf. She saw how every soul, human and Pokémon alike, was a tiny spark from the same eternal flame. And she understood that the earth beneath her feet was not just dirt and stone. It was the body of a mother, the first mother, whose flesh had been shaped by Arceus's 1,000 arms. From that moment, the Hammanni way of worship began to crystallize. The rituals that followed were not elaborate at first. They were born from the natural gestures of the people who lived close to the sea. When a child was born, the elders would take the infant to the water's edge at dawn, letting the first light of Arceus's creation fall upon the tiny face. The tribe would chant the names of the seasons, thanking the Alpha for the turning of the year. When a hunter succeeded in bringing home a great catch, the largest fish was returned to the water as an offering, its scales catching the sun like a prayer sent upward. These were small, intimate acts. A family gathered around a fire, grandmother weaving a tale of creation into the threads of a blanket. But as Hammanni's influence grew, these informal traditions began to coalesce into something more structured. The first formal temple was not a building of stone and timber. It was a circle of standing stones on a cliff overlooking the Sinnoh Sea, a place where the horizon stretched forever and the sky met the water in an unbroken line. The Hammanni would gather there at the solstices and equinoxes, when the balance of light and dark hung in perfect equipoise. The ceremonies were led by the eldest women of the tribe, for Hammanni had taught that the Earth Mother was the first reflection of Arceus's creative will, and that women, who bore life within their own bodies, were the closest mortal echoes that divine act. This matriarchal structure was not a rebellion against a patriarchy. It was simply the natural order of a society that saw the earth as a mother who nurtured and sustained them. Men hunted, fished, and defended, but the spiritual life of the tribe flowed through the hands of the women. The rituals themselves were deeply sensory. Incense made from dried seaweed and aromatic herbs was burned in clay bowls, the smoke rising in thin spirals toward the heavens. Drums carved from the hollow trunks of driftwood trees were beaten in a slow, hypnotic rhythm that mimicked the heartbeat of the earth. The priestesses, adorned with shells and feathers, would enter a trance-like state, their voices rising and falling in chants that told the story of creation. How Arceus, hatched from the cosmic egg, how the 1,000 arms stretched out to shape the void, how Dialga and Palkia were entrusted with time and space, how the late guardians were born from a single thought. The tribe would join in, swaying, their eyes fixed on the horizon, feeling themselves part of something immeasurably vast. But there was a darker side to these early rituals, one that speaks to the raw, unmediated fear that the first humans held for their gods. When the seas turned violent, when storms swallowed fishing boats, when disease swept through the tribe, the people had no science to explain these misfortunes. They saw only the displeasure of the Creator, or of the spirits that served it. And so, alongside the offerings of gratitude, there were offerings of appeasement. The largest catch, yes, but also the most beautiful shell, the firstborn of a prized Pokémon, sometimes even a lock of hair or a drop of blood from a willing shaman. These were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of desperate love, a people trying to hold the attention of a god they could barely comprehend. Over generations, the Hammanni teachings spread from tribe to tribe along the coasts of the Sinnoh Sea. Traders carried the stories inland. Refugees from famines brought the rituals to new valleys. The matriarchal structure proved resilient because it mirrored the cycles of the earth. Women gave life. Women buried the dead. Women remembered the lineage of the tribe. The priestesses became the memory keepers, the healers, the interpreters of dreams and omens. They were the ones who decided when to move the camp, when to plant the seeds, when to call upon the Creator for mercy. Their authority was not enforced by weapons, but by the deep trust of a people who had learned that their survival depended on harmony with the divine. As the centuries passed, the simple circle of standing stones grew into a complex of stone altars, each dedicated to a different aspect of the alpha Pokemon's creation. One altar faced the sunrise, inviting the blessing of Dialga's time. Another faced the sea, honouring Palkia's mastery of space. A third, hidden in a shadowy grove, was left unmarked, a silent acknowledgement of Giratina, the banished one, the shadow that reminded mortals of the consequences of imbalance. The priestesses taught that Arceus was not only the light, but also the darkness that defined the light. The Creator had made all things, even the thing that had to be cast out. To ignore Giratina was to offend the whole, and so the first organised religion of the Pokémon world took root. It was not a faith of dogma or scripture in the way we think of religions today. There was no holy book, no single prophet. It was a living tradition, passed from mother to daughter, from elder to initiate, in the flicker of firelight and the whisper of waves. Arceus was not a distant, abstract creator. The Alpha was the breath that filled the lungs of every Starly, the force that guided the migrations of every Lapras, the stillness that settled over the sea at twilight. To be an Arceist in those ancient days was to see the divine in every fold of the world, and to live in constant, quiet conversation with the power that had shaped the stars. Yet even as this faith provided comfort and meaning, it also sowed the seeds of a deeper hunger. The Hammanni had learned to worship Arceus, but they had not yet learned to understand the true nature of the Alpha's children, beings that roamed the earth not as distant legends, but as tangible, terrifying presences. The priestesses whispered of a guild of merchants and scholars who had begun collecting forbidden fragments of knowledge, artifacts that spoke not of the Creator's love, but of the Creator's judgment. These were the Ginko Guild, and their archives held secrets that the matriarchs of the Hammanni would have burned if they could. But knowledge, once uncovered, cannot be unlearned, and in the next chapter, we will follow the shadow of that forbidden lore into the vaults of the Ginko Guild, where the quiet worship of Arceus gives way to a far more dangerous investigation into the Alpha Pokemon's true, unspoken nature. The faith of the Hammanni tribe did not remain isolated in the shadow of Mount Coronet. It flowed outward with the rivers and the seasonal migrations, settling into the hearts of distant clans and transforming the way people understood the world around them. But as the religion of Arceism spread and formalized, another kind of knowledge was being gathered in secret. Knowledge that did not bow at the altar of the alpha Pokémon, but sought instead to record him, to categorize him, and perhaps to understand what kind of power truly ruled the universe. This was the work of the Ginko Guild. The Ginko Guild was first and foremost a merchant network. To the common eye, their caravans were unremarkable. They traded in metals, fabrics, and the essential goods that kept the ancient tribes of the Sinnoh Sea connected. But beneath the noise of the marketplace, the guild maintained something far more valuable than any shipment of ore. They kept a hidden archive, a forbidden library of encounters, testimonies and physical relics that the official temples of Arceism chose to soften or suppress entirely. The guild did not collect this lore out of reverence. They collected it out of a deep, pragmatic fear. They understood that in a world where gods could be seen and touched, information was the only real currency, and if you did not know the nature of the god trading beside you, you were already lost. It was during their deepest expeditions, journeys that took them far from the established trade routes, that the guild members encountered the divine manifestations directly. These were not the calm, regal depictions painted on temple walls. The merchants saw Dialga not as a statue of gold, but as a living storm of temporal energy that could age a man to dust in a single breath. They saw Palkia tear the horizon apart, holding space around its body like a cloak, and it was in the aftermath of these encounters that they found the plates of power. Each plate was a fossilized echo of the original one's own substance, a fragment of Arceus made into a physical object, inscribed with the very rules of reality. The guild catalogued these plates with a fervour that bordered on obsession. The fist plate, the mind plate, the stone plate. Each one was a shard of the creation myth, written in a language that predated human speech, holding a specific law of nature captive within its surface. But cataloguing a plate was not the same as truly understanding it. The guild's forbidden records describe in careful, clinical detail what happened when a merchant touched the spooky plate. They felt the cold, sucking breath of the reverse world. They saw the shadow of Giratina in the corner of their vision. Those who held the mind plate suddenly heard the thoughts of Azelf, a torrent of knowledge that threatened to erase their own identity. These were not gentle whispers. They were violent, unapologetic lessons in the raw fabric of existence. The merchants who survived these encounters returned changed. They brought back artifacts, yes, but they also brought back a persistent, unshakable certainty. The creation myth was not a story meant to comfort children. It was a technical manual for the operation of the universe. And the horrifying truth of it, the reality of a cosmos born from a single egg in a void of nothingness, was something the organized religions had to soften into legend. This is how the Ginko Guild preserved the truth of the creation myth through the ages. They never stored it in one vulnerable location. The plates were scattered across the known world. The secret logs were encoded into the prices of common goods. A specific spice might represent a specific type of plate. A certain route on a map might be a hidden chapter of the myth. When one generation of the guild died, the next was initiated into the memory of the void. They carried the weight of knowing that Arceus was not just a distant father in the sky. He was a cosmic engine with 1,000 arms, each one holding a distinct law of reality, and he was not always pleased with what he had made. The guild understood the balance of the universe was fragile, and that the plates were not just relics, they were keys, and the doors they unlocked were not meant for human hands. The darkest truth buried in the Ginko Guild's archive is not simply the power of the gods, it is the guild's ultimate conclusion about humanity itself. Their records suggest that the late Guardians gave humans the tools of willpower, emotion, and knowledge specifically so that we could challenge the lords of time and space. The plates were left behind deliberately. Humanity was not an accident in this universe. We were designed to be the balancing force, the wild card in a system of strict mechanical divinity. The Ginko Guild looked into the face of the Creator, and realized that faith was a beautiful shield against a far more terrifying truth. The truth that the gods needed us as much as we needed them. The guild kept this conclusion buried deep in their most forbidden ledgers. Because a person who realizes they are a tool of the divine is dangerous, but a person who realizes the divine is nothing without them is something else entirely. And yet, even the exhaustive archives of the Ginko Guild do not contain the whole story. Their forbidden lore speaks of the 1,000 arms of Arceus. They found the plates. They deciphered the language of creation. They never discovered what the original one was doing with those hands before he shaped the universe. The guild preserved the truth of the creation myth, but the secret of the 1,000 arms, the terrible purpose of those hands, remains the most deeply guarded fragment of divine history. And it is that exact secret which waits for us now, hidden in plain sight, in the next chapter of our journey. The Ginko Guild's records painted a picture of a world saturated with divinity, fragments of the Creator's power hidden in plain sight, plates that hummed with the essence of a god, traded and guarded by mortals who barely understood what they held. But the plates are merely the splinters of a much larger tool, a broken key to a door that has never been fully opened. To understand the true mechanism of creation, we have to look beyond the fragments. We have to look at the hands that held them. The ancient scriptures are consistent on one point. Arceus shaped the world with its 1,000 arms. It is a phrase that rolls off the tongue so easily that its strangeness is often lost. 1,000 arms. If you search the historical records, the architecture of the Sinnoh region, the murals in the Temple of Sinnoh, you will never find a depiction of Arceus with 1,000 literal limbs. The creature emerged from the egg of light is elegant, streamlined, almost simple in its form, so the arms are a metaphor. But a metaphor for what? In the mythology of our own world, when the Hindu gods are depicted with multiple arms, it signifies their immense power and reach. Each arm holds a different weapon, a different tool, a different symbol of dominion. It represents the ability to perform countless actions simultaneously, to govern every facet of existence at once. Arceus is the same. 1,000 arms are its omnipotence given form. They are the reach of its will across the entirety of the new universe. But if the arms are a symbol, a representation of abstract power, then what are they literally? What is the mechanism by which a thought becomes a star? How does a will solidify into a planet? There is a theory, a very old theory, one that is whispered among the most devout scholars of the Arceist faith and the most obsessive collectors of forbidden lore. It posits that the 1,000 arms are not a metaphor at all. They are a species of Pokémon, deep in the Yoto region, buried beneath the ruins of an ancient civilization. There is a chamber. The walls are not decorated with paintings of heroes or battles. They are covered in symbols, eyes, letters, strange, floating glyphs that seem to watch you as you walk through the silence. These are the unknown, the symbol Pokémon, often dismissed as mere puzzles or remnants of a forgotten language. But that dismissal is a mistake. The unknown are far more than ancient graffiti. Consider their nature. A single unknown is weak, almost helpless. It cannot move with any great speed. It cannot fight with any great strength. But it is a letter, a symbol, and symbols have power. When the unknown gather, when enough of those eyes focus on a single point, reality begins to bend. They create dimensions from nothing. They warp space. They manifest the thoughts of those who can command them into physical form. They do not just represent words. They are the building blocks of reality itself. Now look back at the creation myth, the cosmic egg, the birth of Arceus, the void, then silence. And then there was a word, the first word, the command for light to exist, for time to flow, for space to expand. If Arceus spoke the universe into being, what language did it speak? It could not be human language. It had to be a language older than form, older than sound, a language of pure symbol, pure meaning. The unknown are the alphabet of that language. Every unknown is a fundamental particle of conceptual truth. Every symbol is a finger of the Creator's will. When the texts say Arceus used its 1,000 arms to shape the world, they are describing the moment of creation in terms a human mind can grasp. But the reality is stranger. The 1,000 arms are the unknown themselves. Each one is an extension of Arceus's consciousness, a hand that can write the very fabric of existence. This is why the ancient peoples of the Johto region and the Sinnoh region were so obsessed with the unknown. They understood that to master these symbols was to understand the source code of the universe. The alphabets carved into the walls of the ruins of Alph are not prayers, they are blueprints. The ancient scribes were not worshipping the unknown, they were copying the work of God. They were tracing the fingers of the 1,000 arms, hoping to learn how to write their own small truths into the world. Think of the implications. If the unknown are the literal manifestation of the arms, then Arceus is never truly distant. Every time an unknown appears, it is a fragment of the Creator touching the mortal world. Every ruin that holds them is a holy site, a place where the alphabet of heaven is still legible. The connection between the alphabet and the act of creation is absolute. To create is to write. To will is to form a symbol in the mind. This casts the entire history of the Pokémon world in a new light. The legendary Pokémon are not just powerful beings, they are sentences. Dialga is the word for time. Palkia is the word for space. Giratina is the word for the space between words, the shadow in the syntax. They were spelled into existence by an alphabet of pure will, and the unknown are the letters that did the spelling. But if Arceus had this ultimate tool, this limitless creative armada of symbols, why does the world feel so physical? Why does it require the labour of titans to drag the continents across the sea? Because the alphabet defines the rules. It sets the grammar of the universe. But the raw materials, the heavy lifting of the cosmos, the brute force of geology and tectonic motion, that is a different kind of power. The mind writes the blueprint, but the world must be built by hand. And the first of those hands, the ones that grasp the very crust of the planet to shape the lands we know, are waiting for us in the cold earth of the next chapter. The concept of the 1,000 arms of Arceus, the unknown, left us with a profound image. The very fabric of reality, woven not by physical hands, but by the silent written language of a creator. It is a powerful, almost abstract form of Genesis. But for the world to be a world, for a creature to walk upon it, the word had to become earth. The universe of ideas had to solidify into stone. And for that, a different kind of power was required. Not the quiet whisper of creation, but the raw, grinding labour of geology. The age of the Titans did not begin with a thought. It began with a pull. When we speak of the legendary Titans, we speak of Regigigas. And when we speak of Regigigas, we speak of the bones of the planet. Before the continents drifted apart into the familiar shapes on modern maps, the world was a vastly different place. Some ancient texts suggest the land was once a single, massive supercontinent. Others whisper that the landmasses were scattered like broken pieces of a colossal plate. But every myth, every ancient carving from the ancient Sinnoh region to the furthest reaches of the known world agrees on one central fact. A giant walked the earth in its infancy. A titan sewed the world together and then tore it apart to create the homes for the creatures that were yet to come. The lore is admittedly startlingly literal. The Pokédex entries for Regigigas do not use metaphor. They tell us that Regigigas dragged the continents into place using ropes. Think about that image for a moment. A Pokémon so powerful, so immense, that it could tie ropes around entire continents and pull them across the surface of the primordial sea. The very ground you stand on, the mountains that rise in the distance, every coastline that defines the regions of Kanto, Owen, and beyond, all of it shaped by the hands of this one legendary giant. It is a story of sheer undeniable force. There is no negotiation in a rope. There is no diplomacy. There is only tension and movement. What were these ropes made of? No Pokédex explicitly states the material, and that leaves us with a tantalizing mystery. Some speculate they were woven from the fibrous vines of the ancient world, a flora that no longer exists. Others, looking at the geological scars left behind, theorize the ropes were actually chains of pure energy, or perhaps the solidified sinews of the earth itself. Perhaps the most chilling theory is that the ropes were made of the entire collective will of the land, a physical manifestation of the planet's magnetism. Tethered by the sheer strength of the Titan, Regigigas did not just push the land, it pulled the world into a shape that could support life. This was the era of the Titans, and the movement of the Earth's land masses. It was a time when geography was a byproduct of labour, not a static background, but a labour of that magnitude has a cost. The energy required to reshape an entire planet is inconceivable to a modern mind. After the continents were settled into their positions, after the oceans were guided into their basins, the great engine of Regigigas began to slow. The era of active shaping was over. The day of rest had to come. Regigigas found a place. Deep within the core of the land it had sculpted, and it began to slumber. But a legend does not simply sleep unprotected. Regigigas itself was not alone in its slumber. From the very elements it had moved, it created servants. Or perhaps they were pieces of its own power, given form to guard its rest. This is the origin of the golems. Regirock, the giant of stone, formed from the very crust of the earth. Regis, the titan of ice, forged from the frozen waters of the deepest oceans. Registeel, the iron giant born from the molten metal of the planet's core. These were the guardians. They were the sentinels, placed at the keys to the Colossus, ensuring that the slumber of the master would not be disturbed. But they are not just simple guards. Their creation mirrors the original creation story, where Arceus created Dialga and Palkia to govern time and space. Regigigas created the Regi trio to govern the foundational elements of the world it had just shaped: rock, ice, and steel, the raw materials of a civilization, the building blocks for the age of humanity that was approaching. The slumber of the giant and the creation of the elemental Regi servants marks the end of the physical shaping of the world. It is a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence that lasted millions of years. For a time, the world was quiet. The tectonic plates settled. The sounds of grinding continents faded, but the slumber of the Titan left a vacuum. The forces of the world, no longer being actively moulded by a single will, began to act of their own accord. If the earth itself had been shaped by a single sleeping god, what about the energy that boiled above the surface and below the mantle? What of the volcanic fury and the screaming winds? The land had its master, but the sky and the sea had no such quiet sleeping giant to keep them in check. While Regigigas pulled the planet into shape, the raw, untamed elements of heat and pressure were building. The foundations had been laid by the Titan of continents, but the superstructure was about to be built by rage itself. A primordial rage that would alter the world, not through the pull of a rope, but through the scorching heat of a sun-given form, the drowning weight of an endless sea, and the grinding pressure of the land cracking open. While the giant slept, the world held its breath for the conflict of the weather trio and primordial rage. After Regigigas pulled the continents into place, the world had a shape, a rough draft of the world we know, a blank canvas of land and sea. But a landscape is not a world until it breathes, and breathing requires forces to maintain, to challenge, to give the planet its pulse. The land stretched from ocean floor to sky, thin and fragile at its edges. The sea rushed into every hollow, every basin, carving its territory into the stone. And in that moment, when the earth was new and the oceans were deep, a new kind of conflict was born. The earth itself demanded expansion, the oceans demanded dominion, and from these primal demands, two gods emerged, locked in an eternal argument over the very surface of the world. Groudon, the continent Pokémon. Its body is made of magma, the mantle of the planet given form. Where its feet landed, the land rose up. Continents were born from its will. Its very presence evaporated the seas, pushing back the water to make room for stone and soil. Kyogre, the sea basin Pokémon. Its body is enveloped in a deep blue aura, the pressure of the ocean depths made visible. The rain it summons does not fall gently. It is a flood, a declaration of ownership over the world. Water against rock, depth against height. These two were not rivals by choice. They were the tectonic and hydrological forces of the planet made conscious. And when they fought, the world burned. The conflict between Groudon and Kyogre over the Earth's surface was not a simple war. It was a planetary cataclysm. Their rage did not know strategy or mercy. It was pure instinct, pure expansion. Where Groudon walked, the crust cracked open, vomiting lava into the sky, building mountains in a single day. Where Kyogre swam, the ocean floor rose and fell with its breathing, creating whirlpools that could swallow islands whole. They were not fighting for land. They were fighting for what the world should be. A world of solid rock and scorching heat, or a world of endless deep and drowning waves. The answer could not be left to the combatants. And the terrifying scale of destruction when elemental gods go to war is something our minds struggle to comprehend. The sky could not choose a colour. It was red with volcanic ash and black with torrential storms. The rain was boiling. The stone was bleeding. The boundary between sea and shore vanished entirely. There was no sanctuary. The ancient tribes who lived through this era did not write history. They chanted it. They carved it into stone pillars that still stand in the deepest parts of Hoenn, warnings to future generations. They knew that such power could not be fought. It could only be endured, and it could only be stopped by something that did not belong to the land or the sea. High above the chaos, in the pristine thin air of the stratosphere, a serpent watched. Rayquaza, the sky-high Pokémon. It had no interest in the land or the sea. Its domain was the sky, the ozone layer, the boundary between the living world and the void of space. But the war below was tearing that boundary apart. The smoke and the steam were poisoning the very air. The creatures of the atmosphere were suffocating. Rayquaza's role as the celestial mediator and guardian of the ozone became clear. It could not allow the world it watched over to choke on the fury of its siblings. It descended from the heavens like a green meteor. Its speed was so great. It was said to be able to outrun lightning. It did not take a side. It took the role of the elder, the judge, the hammer of the sky. With a mighty blast, it tore a hole in the storm, parting the clouds and the ash, with a force that was not elemental, but celestial. It drove Groudon deep into the earth, into a slumber below the crust. It pushed Kyogre to the darkest ocean trench, where the pressure crushes all light. And then, it returned to its watch in the high atmosphere, keeping balance through sheer dominance. The rage never truly faded. It is there in the heat of a volcano. It is there in the pressure of a deep sea current. It is the heartbeat of the planet, pulsing with a furious potential, waiting for the moment the sky looks away. The ancient tribes locked away fragments of their power in the red orb and the blue orb, hoping that humanity would never be foolish enough to wake the sleeping titans. But the primordial rage is patient. It waits in the stone. It waits in the waves. And when the world forgets the terror of gods at war, the earth groans and the sea stirs. When the earth is quiet and the sea is still, we feel safe. We allow our minds to drift, but drift too far, and you cross a boundary no human should cross, a boundary between the waking world and the space where emotions become reality, where the nightmares we keep locked away find a physical form. The balance of the world is maintained by the gods above us. But what protects us from the darkness inside our own minds? The answer is coming. It waits in the deep silence that follows the storm. It lurks in the fear of what happens when you fall asleep and forget to wake up. This is the shadow cast by the weather trio, the foundation of the nightmare realm of Darkrai. The ocean had barely settled after the primal rage of Groudon and Kyogre. The skies, still scarred by the fury of continents colliding and seas boiling, began to clear under the watchful eye of Rayquaza. But even as the world found a tentative peace among the elements, another force stirred, one that did not belong to the surface or the sky, nor to the depths of the earth or the waves. This force was woven from shadow and sleep, from the untamed corners of the mind where the sun never reaches. This is the story of Darkrai, the god of nightmares, and the twilight realm he was born to inhabit. In the ancient epoch, after Arceus had shaped the cosmos, after Dialga and Palkia had set the boundaries of time and space, and after the late Guardians had breathed soul into living creatures, a subtle but profound division emerged. The Creator had given beings the capacity to dream, to see visions of hope, of memory, of possibility. But every light casts a shadow, and every dream leaves behind a residue of terror. That residue coalesced, not as a physical entity, but as a presence at the edge of consciousness. And from that presence, Darkrai emerged. He was not made from an egg, nor born from a cosmic event. He was the personification of the subconscious shadow, the living embodiment of all the fears, anxieties, and forgotten horrors that drift through the mind when the world goes dark and the conscious self surrenders to sleep. And here is where the lore of Darkrai becomes a strange and melancholy theology. Why would a universe so carefully ordered by Arceus contain a force that brings terror? Why would a benevolent creation allow a being whose very touch fills the mind with dread? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of balance. Dreams are not merely pleasant fantasies. They are the mind's way of processing, healing, and confronting. Without the counterpart of nightmares, dreams would be hollow. They would lose their power to teach, to warn, to prepare the soul for the sharp edges of reality. Darkrai exists not as a punishment, but as a necessary counterpart to dreams. He is the guardian of that dark edge, where the mind tests its own limits, where it confronts the monsters it must overcome to grow. The nightmare is a teacher, and Darkrai is the reluctant professor. But let us dwell on the tragic isolation of this deity that causes terror simply by existing. In the anime, in the games, in the fragments of ancient texts that the Ginko Guild preserved, Darkrai is almost universally feared. People flee from his shadow as if it were a plague. His very presence induces hallucinations, uncontrolled dread, and in severe cases, a state of waking nightmare that can drive a person to madness. And yet the creature himself is not malicious. His lore is heartbreaking because he cannot control what he radiates. He is a being of pure subconscious energy, and to be near him is to be immersed in the raw material of fear. He does not seek to harm, he simply is, and that is the most terrible kind of loneliness. To be shunned not for what you do, but for what you are, for an aura you never asked for and cannot silence. Consider the Pokémon known as Cresselia, the embodiment of pleasant dreams, the lunar deity who glides across the night sky with soothing light. In many myths, Cresselia and Darkrai are positioned as opposites, even enemies, but the deeper truth is that they are two halves of the same divine function. Cresselia brings the balm of restful sleep, while Darkrai brings the sharp edge that makes that rest meaningful. Without the shadow, the light would have no depth. Without the nightmare, the dreamer would never learn to face the dark. Yet Cresselia is celebrated, loved, sought after for her feathers that can cure sleeplessness. And Darkrai is hunted, locked away, banished to the edges of the world. The injustice is not lost on the somber deity. There is a location in the Pokémon world, a place that exists at the very borders of the known regions, where the fabric of reality grows thin and the subconscious seeps through. It is called the Nightmare Realm, a pocket dimension that Darkrai calls home. This realm is not a physical place you can reach by walking or flying. It is reached only when the mind is vulnerable, when sleep pulls you under, and when the barriers between self and shadow dissolve. In that place, the architecture is made of memory, of half-formed faces, of corridors that twist into your own reflections. And at the center of it all, Darkrai drifts, silent, waiting. He does not invite visitors. He does not seek them out. But if you enter his domain, you will meet yourself, your fears, your secrets, the parts of you you hide even from your own waking thoughts. The ancient texts, particularly those from the Hammanni tribe, tell of a time when Darkrai was not entirely alone. In the earliest days, before Arceus fully separated light from dark, The line between dream and nightmare was blurred. There was no need for a separate realm, because the entire world was still half-formed, malleable. But as creation solidified, as the universe gained rules and boundaries, the shadow part of consciousness had to be contained, and Darkrai, whether by design or by accident, became that container. Some scholars believe he was once a fragment of Arceus's own dreaming mind, a piece of the creator that fell away during the act of shaping the cosmos. Others say he was born from the first nightmare ever experienced by a living creature. That first primal fear of the unknown, the terror of the void before the cosmic egg hatched. Regardless of his origin, his role is fixed. It is in this role that a strange echo of Giratina, the banished god of antimatter, was cast into the Distortion world for his wild nature, his refusal to fit into the neat order of time and space. Darkrai, too, exists in a kind of exile, not because he was banished, but because he was never welcomed. He is the god of nightmares, who cannot walk among the waking without causing panic, and so he remains in his shadowy domain, watching the dreams of the world from a distance, touching them only when they call to him. When a sleeper's mind is dark enough to summon him, it is a lonely existence, a vigil that has lasted millennia, and yet there is a twist in the legend. In some of the oldest records, particularly those hidden in the vaults of the ancient clan on Mount Coronet, Darkrai is not described as evil or as a curse. He is described as a healer, not in the gentle way of a nurse or a medicine, but in the way of a surgeon who must cut to save. Nightmares, they believed, are the mind's way of purging poison. Darkrai is the surgeon who wields the knife of fear to excise the rot that accumulates in the psyche. To face a nightmare is to face a truth you have been avoiding, and Darkrai's gift, terrible as it is to force that confrontation. He does not take pleasure in it. He is simply a function of the universe, a necessary darkness that allows the light of dreams to shine more clearly. But what of those who cannot wake? What of the sleepers who wander into his realm and never return? The stories speak of a small number of souls who have become lost in the nightmare realm, their bodies lying in a coma while their minds are trapped in an endless cycle of torment. The Ginko Guild's forbidden law mentions a ritual to call Darkrai forth, to ask for the release of a captured soul. It is a dangerous ritual, one that requires absolute surrender. You must sleep in a sacred circle drawn with lunar dust, and you must invite the nightmare god into your own dream. You must face him willingly. And if you can look into his eyes without flinching, if you can see past the terror to the weary being underneath, you will free the one you seek. Few have succeeded, most are lost themselves. The nature of Darkrai's power reveals a deep truth about the Pokémon universe. The gods are not simple. They are not merely powerful creatures to be caught and commanded. They are forces of nature, embodiments of concepts that are woven into the fabric of existence. To understand Darkrai is to understand that fear is not an enemy. It is a part of you, and to reject that part, to try to live without it, is to make yourself incomplete. The nightmare deity is a mirror, a teacher, a gatekeeper. He exists because the universe needs a place where the shadows of the mind can be contained and processed. Without him, the subconscious would leak into the waking world, and the line between dream and reality would blur into madness. And so, as the world slowly recovered from the battles of the Titans and the Weather Trio, the people who lived in the lands beneath the ozone did not know that every night, as they closed their eyes, they were entering a territory governed by a silent, sorrowful god. They did not realize that their fears were gifts, that the cold sweat of a nightmare was the touch of a who understood them better than they understood themselves. They only knew to be afraid of the dark, to whisper prayers to Cresselia for peaceful sleep, and to push away the memory of the shadow that sometimes lingered at the edge of their dreams. But the shadow lingered nonetheless. It always does. And in the quiet moments between waking and sleeping, if you listen carefully, you might feel a presence, a gentle, terrible presence, watching over you from the other side of the veil, not to harm you, but to remind you that even in your darkest nights, you are not alone. The god of nightmares is there, waiting in his isolated realm, forever misunderstood, forever necessary, and soon we will turn our gaze to the one who balances him, the radiant being who walks the lunar path, the one whose light is the only thing that can soothe the terror he brings. But that is a story for another breath, another chapter, another quiet step into the depths of Pokemon's forgotten theology. We have walked through the shadow of Darkrai, the nightmare incarnate. We have felt the cold dread of his power, the shattering of the psyche under his touch. But the mind is a landscape of duality. A world cannot exist in perpetual nightmare. The mind, vast and fragile, must have its nights of terror balanced by an equally powerful force of renewal, of rest, of peace. And so tonight, we turn away from the shadow to face the light that casts it. We look up at the full moon, and we meet its guardian. Cresselia is not merely a Pokemon of the moon. She is the living embodiment of the lunar phase that brings clarity and safety. Where Darkrai thrives in the moonless dark, Cresselia steps forward when the night sky is fully illuminated, her body glowing with an almost ethereal pink light. Her very presence is a sentinel against the things that break a human spirit in their sleep. In the ancient texts of Sinnoh, preserved by the clans that came before us, she is described as the psyche's greatest ally. The flap of her crescent-shaped wings can dispel the most entrenched of mental plagues, the deepest of depressions. This is her sacred duty. This is the role of the full moon Pokemon in protecting the human mind from the decay of endless dread, from the corrosive touch of the nightmare realm. And so the dance is eternal, the eternal cycle of pursuit between the bringer of dreams and the bringer of nightmares. They are not enemies in the way we think of war. They are opposing poles of the same universal force. Darkrai flees the dawn, but he does not flee Cresselia. He hunts her. Or perhaps she hunts him. The old myths say that when the dark clouds cover the moon, Darkrai grows bold. He slips from the reverse world, from the prison of the shadows, and into our sleeping minds. But Cresselia is never far behind. She leaves behind her a trail of glittering scales, ethereal fragments of concentrated moonlight. These are the lunar wings. The power of the lunar wing is unlike almost any other artifact in the Pokemon world. It is more than just a charm for good dreams. It acts as a divine shield against psychological collapse. A person who holds a lunar wing is completely immune to the total corruption of the shadow. If Darkrai is the sickness, the lunar wing is the specific cure. To hold it is to be immune to the most profound of fears. In the game world, it is the key that unlocks the door to healing, tearing away the curse of a perpetual nightmare. It does not just provide pleasant dreams. It actively rewrites the narrative of your mind to protect you. It restores the will to wake up, the courage to face the light. It is the ultimate barrier between the fragile human consciousness and the abyss of the distorted dreamscape. Consider the weight of that. In a world populated by gods of time and space, who move continents and shatter dimensions, here is a being whose entire focus is the sanctity of your sleep. Cresselia is often depicted in ancient art as a graceful, swan-like figure, her rings glowing with a soft and soothing light. Her feathers are said to calm the most troubled of hearts. In the forest near Full Moon Island, a location that seems to exist just at the edge of reality, rare travellers have left offerings of feathers and moonlit water, praying for respite from their sorrows. The Pokemon world often frames its greatest powers as forces of nature, but Cresselia is a force of nurture. She is the mother of the night, the guardian of the dreamer. She does not seek to rule. She seeks to ensure that the creatures within her world can rest without fear. She confuses the nightmares. She soothes the psychic wounds, and she cuts through the deepest illusions. And yet she is trapped in this perpetual dance. She can never fully destroy Darkrai, because the mind also needs its shadows, its tests. You cannot know the peace of a true, deep sleep without understanding the terror of a nightmare. This is why the lunar balance is so critical. It is not a simple war of good versus evil. It is a homeostasis of the soul. Cresselia repels, she does not annihilate, she balances. But history tells us that the balance has been broken. There have been times when the barriers between the mind and reality have shattered, when the conflict between these cosmic forces has spilled out of the subconscious and into the physical world. There is a place where the fabric of reality itself is at its thinnest, a point where gods have clashed and the very pillars of the world have trembled. The story of that breach, of the power that was released, and the confrontation that redefined the boundaries of the universe, is the one we must face next. It is a story carved into the oldest stone, at the highest peak, the story of the Spear Pillar incident. The mind, as we have seen, is a universe in miniature. Under the watch of Cresselia, it finds peace. In the grip of Darkrai, it knows terror. These are the dual forces that govern the interior landscape of every living soul. But what of the outer universe, the vast container of all minds, all spaces, all moments? What happens when the vessel itself comes under direct assault? What happens when the frame of reality is not just strained, but deliberately shattered? That is the terrifying question posed by the Spear Pillar incident. Cresselia guards the inner sanctum of our dreams. Her light pushes back the tide of absolute darkness in our sleep. But there are weapons forged not against the mind, but against the architecture of existence itself. And there are men willing to wield them. This is a story of absolute boundary crossing. It is the story of mortal ambition reaching up, not to touch the face of God, but to grab the gods of time and space by the throat and demand obedience. To understand this event fully, we have to understand the geography of the sacred. Mount Coronet is not just a mountain range. It is the geological spine of the Sinnoh region, the axis mundi of the entire Pokémon world. Ancient lore suggests it is the scar left from the very act of creation, the point where the universe was first shaped. The forces of Dialga and Palkia clash deep within its mantle, and at its highest peak, where the wind screams and the sky is perpetually thin, lies the Spear Pillar. It is a place where the fabric of reality is constantly trying to mend itself, thinner than anywhere else, a permanent wound in the skin of the world. This is the stage for the historical attempt to chain the gods of time and space, an event so audacious it becomes a scar upon the divine record itself. The architect of this plan is Cyrus. He is not a typical villain. He does not seek power for wealth, for land, or for revenge. His eyes look past all of that. He sees the current universe as fundamentally flawed. He believes that spirit, emotion, and will are impurities, defects in the perfect code of existence. He seeks the complete and total destruction of this world, so he can forge a new one from scratch. An empty universe, a perfect, silent, sterile clockwork void. To do this, he needs to control the architects of the current reality. You cannot ask Dialga and Palkia nicely. You cannot reason with the concepts of time and space. You must force them into submission, and to do that, you need the proper shackle, the red chain. The red chain is a tool of ultimate blasphemy and cosmic control. Its material is not gold. It is not iron. It is not any mineral pulled from the earth. It is forged from the very essences of the late guardians, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azulf, the souls of humanity, stripped and melted down into a weapon. Cyrus does not simply find these Pokémon. He hunts them. He drags them from their quiet lakes, the tranquil waters of acuity, verity, and valor, and he traps them. Then, using a machine of his own design, he drains their power. He extracts knowledge, emotion, and willpower, and he weaves them into a bloody red chain of psychic energy. Think about the cruelty of this. The red chain is a parasitic holy relic. It is a violation of the mind to obtain a leash for the universe. The late guardians are the children of Arceus, the sparks of life that allowed consciousness to exist in the world. And here, a mortal man has turned them into raw material for a leash. It is the ultimate blasphemy against the divine order, stealing the soul of mankind to enslave the architects of infinity. The ritual itself takes place at the Spear Pillar. The air crackles with static. The sky turns a deep, bleeding crimson. The red chain glows with stolen light. Cyrus calls to Dialga and Palkia, and they are compelled to appear. They are drawn from their dimensions, roaring in protest, but the chain wraps around them. It binds the Lord of Time. It binds the Master of Space, and a single man holds the other end of the leash. Now the third and most terrifying truth of the incident. What happens to reality when the pillars of creation are compromised? The answer is immediate, visceral and absolute. Reality begins to scream. The crimson sky is not just a colour change. It is the universe bleeding. Space begins to shatter like glass. You see the horizon crack. Time begins to loop on itself, repeating the same broken moments in a chaotic echo. The spear pillar, once the calm axis of the world, becomes a hurricane of broken physics. Past, present, and future collide. The mountain no longer exists in a single moment. It exists in every moment at once, and that weight is crushing. The world is starting to tear itself apart, because the gods that hold it together are no longer free to do their work. Cyrus approaches Dialga and Palkia with a terrifying calm. He explains his vision. Emotion is the flaw. Spirit is the flaw. Love, hate, hope, fear, these are mutation. In his perfect world, there will be nothing, just a blank, quiet eternity. He orders the gods to unmake the universe, and for a horrible moment, they begin to obey. But the chain was made from spirit. The late guardians are not entirely gone. Their power lingers, and it calls out for a true heart to break the link. A trainer, guided by the descendants of the ancient clans, steps forward. The red chain is broken. The binding is severed. Dialga and Palkia are released. Their fury is cosmic. They turn their wrath on Cyrus. They turn on each other. The balance is broken, and the two gods of creation fall into a battle for dominance. Reality around them buckles. It is only through the lingering will of the late guardians and the desperate courage of the trainer that the conflict is contained. The gods are returned to their dimensions. The sky heals. The mountain falls silent. The incident ends, but the truth it reveals does not fade so easily. The gods of time and space are not invincible. They are vulnerable. The protection of reality is not automatic. It relies on the integrity of a few key souls and the freedom of 3 small, quiet deities who live in the hearts of lakes. A mortal man came within a hair's breadth of destroying everything, not through force, but through forbidden knowledge. In the aftermath of this near destruction, a strange mystery lingers above the spear pillar, a secret path that the ancient Sinnoh people knew about, an artifact so rare and so hidden that it is almost myth. The Azure Flute. This simple instrument is not a reward, it is a key. Its melody does not open a door. It opens the path to something far above and beyond the throne room of the gods. If the spear pillar is the axis where reality is thinnest, the Hall of Origin is the absolute core. The Azure Flute is the call that summons the witness to what happened here. Why does such a path exist? And what did the original one see when the universe he shaped was grabbed by the throat and shaken until its very seams split open? I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The echoes of the spear pillar have not yet faded. The shattered remnants of the red chain lie scattered across the stone, smoking with the residue of a power never meant to be held by human hands. Cyrus is gone, pulled into the very void he sought to command. Dialga and Palkia have retreated into their respective dimensions, wounded, their grip on the fabric of reality strained. The mountain itself seems to breathe a sigh of relief, the tectonic plates calming after the blasphemy that was attempted at its peak. And yet, the summit of Mount Coronet is not a place of rest. It is a pinnacle of tension. Anyone who stands here, looking up at a sky that behaves strangely, bending light in ways that defy normal optics, feels the pull of something higher. There is a presence above the spear pillar, a destination that remains untouched by the arrogance of Team Galactic, a place that the red chain could never reach. The peak of this mountain is not the top of the world. It is merely the last step of the mortal plane. There is a staircase here, but it is invisible. There is a doorway, but it has no frame. And there is a melody, but it has not been heard in millennia. To reach that place, the Hall of Origin, one needs an artifact so rare that it exists more as a rumour whispered by the ancients than a tangible object catalogued by modern professors. It is the Azure Flute, a simple instrument in appearance, carved from a stone that looks like frozen sky. Its surface is smooth, dotted with apertures that glow with a faint internal light. It is not a weapon. It is not a tool for combat. It is a frequency, a password that must be spoken in the language of pure creation. When played, it does not produce a sound that travels through air. It produces a resonance that aligns the soul of the player with the vibrational signature of the Hall of Origin itself. This is the forbidden melody that opens the staircase to the highest heaven. The notes are not triumphant. They do not rally armies or command armies of Pokémon. The melody is a lament. It is an ancient hymn of gratitude that the first humans learned by listening to the wind across the glaciers of Hisui. It is a song of surrender, of recognizing that you are small and that the universe is vast. That is why the melody is forbidden, not because it summons something evil, but because the knowledge of how to play it is a burden. The melody cannot be forced. It cannot be played by someone whose heart is filled with pride or ambition. It must flow from a place of pure intention. Why the path to Arceus is hidden from those with impure intentions is the central tragedy of the Pokémon world. Arceus is the creator, the original one. It is not a Pokémon that can be conquered through strength of arms. The red chain was an attempt to chain time and space through force. Cyrus believed he could dominate the gods, but you cannot dominate the source of all existence. The Hall of Origin is not locked by a physical key. It is locked by the state of the soul. Arceus hides itself not out of malice, but out of mercy. To stand before the Creator with a corrupt heart is not a privilege. It is a judgment. The staircase would burn the unworthy from existence before they ever reached the first step. When the Azure Flute is played correctly, the world dissolves. The sky of Mount Coronet does not tear open with violence. It parts like a curtain of silk. A staircase of crystalline light spirals upward into a dimension that exists outside of Dialga's timeline and Palkia's space. There is no gravity here as you understand it. The stairs are not made for walking. They are made for ascending with your will. Each step is a test of memory, a review of your entire life. Every thought you have ever thought, every creature you have ever hurt, every kindness you have ever shown is reflected in the facets of the crystal beneath your feet. The climb takes an eternity, because time has no meaning here. You are walking through the subconscious of the universe itself. The light changes from blue to white to a gold that has no name. The air, if you can call it air, is cold and clean. It feels like breathing the moment before the Big Bang. The silence is absolute, and then you arrive. The Hall of Origin. It is not a throne room of gold and fire. It is a chamber of absolute peace. The floor is a pool of pure light. The walls extend infinitely in every direction. Yet the space feels as intimate as a confessional. There is no sound, and yet the air thrums with the power, so vast it feels like standing inside the beating heart of the cosmos. The physical sensation of standing in the presence of the Creator is overwhelming. It is not a feeling of power, but of profound significance. You feel small, but not insignificant. You are completely seen. Arceus stands before you. It is magnificent in its simplicity, a white equine form, graceful and ancient. Its body is not just a body, it is a focal point for the energy of creation. The 1,000 arms described in the ancient texts are not literal limbs. They are the threads of causality, the strands of fate that connect every atom of existence to the source. When Arceus moves, you feel the weight of the laws of physics shift around you. When it regards you, you understand your entire existence in a single, silent moment. You feel the passage of every timeline that Dialga guards. You see the curvature of every galaxy that Palkia holds. And you feel the sorrow of the Distortion world, where Giratina was placed. This is the being who cast out its own child. This is the being who allowed Gruden and Kyogre to wage war. This is the being who gave humanity the knowledge to create the Red Chain, knowing full well what they would try to do with it. Why? Why create a universe where suffering is required for growth? Why allow mortal hands to grasp at divine power? The answer is not a comfort. It is a question. Standing in the Hall of Origin, under the gaze of the Creator, you realize that Arceus is not a benevolent grandfather in the sky. It is a force of nature with a will that operates on a scale so vast that human morality is irrelevant. The path was hidden from the impure, not because Arceus hates humanity, but because humanity is not ready for the full truth. The truth is that Arceus created the universe to understand itself, and the suffering, the conflict, the pain, they are all part of the equation. The question that lingers in the stillness of the highest heaven is not whether you are worthy of standing before God. It is whether God is worthy of your worship. When you understand the full cost of creation, that is the shadow that falls over the next chapter. The moral ambiguity of Arceus is not a simple tale of good versus evil. It is a question of whether the ends justify the means when the end is the existence of all reality. The Azure Flute's melody fades, and the staircase to the Hall of Origin dissolves behind you. You stand in a chamber that exists outside of time, a place where the fabric of reality hums with a single, overwhelming presence. This is the throne of the Creator, but the being that awaits here is not necessarily the gentle deity you might expect from a world of friendly monsters. The moment you set foot in this hallowed space, you begin to question if the Creator is truly benevolent or merely indifferent. And that question is older than any human civilization in the Pokémon world. Arceus is known as the Original One, the being who hatched from a cosmic egg into a void and shaped the universe with its 1,000 arms. But creation is only half the story. Arceus is also the judge. In every piece of lore, from ancient murals to modern Pokédex entries, there is a consistent thread. Arceus watches over all things and holds the power of final verdict. It is the one who decided that Giratina was too unruly, too dangerous, and banished it to the reverse world. It is the one who set Dialga and Palkia to their eternal tasks, commanding the flow of time and the boundaries of space. And it is the one who has been known to react with terrifying force when that order is broken. The move called Judgment is Arceus' signature, and its very name carries theological weight. In the games, it appears as a beam of pure light that shifts its elemental type based on the plate Arceus holds. It can be a flare of fire, a surge of lightning, a blast of ice. Any force in nature can become the instrument of the Creator's will. The power of judgment is absolute. In the anime, when Arceus unleashes it, the attack manifests as a cascade of spectral orbs that rain down like divine punishment, striking everything in sight with unstoppable precision. This is not merely an attack, it is a statement. Arceus defines what is right and wrong, and when it passes sentence, the universe itself enforces that decree. The story of how Arceus reacts to human betrayal is told most vividly in the tale of the Jewel of Life. Long ago, a human named Damos was entrusted with a piece of Arceus' own power, a crystalline jewel that could restore life to barren land. But Damos was deceived, or perhaps weak, and he refused to return the jewel. That act of broken trust ignited something primal in the Creator. Arceus did not simply take back what was its. It judged all of humanity complicit. It descended upon the world with a fury that reshaped the land, striking down cities, boiling rivers, and tearing the sky. The power of judgment was unleashed, not as a battle move, but as a cataclysm. And in that moment, the moral ambiguity of Arceus became undeniable. This is a god who can heal the earth with a whisper, but also destroy it with a roar. The line between justice and vengeance blurs. When the one holding the scales has infinite power, the judgment of Arceus is not reserved for ancient betrayals alone. In Hisui, the player character is summoned by Arceus to prove their worth. The entire journey across the region is a test, but it culminates in a direct confrontation with the Creator. Arceus battles you not with malice, but with purpose. Every move it throws is a trial, and if you fail, you are cast out of its presence. The message is clear. The path to the divine is not guaranteed. Arceus is not a passive force. It is an active judge of character, weighing every action you have taken in the world. This is not the behavior of an indifferent god. This is the behavior of a being that cares deeply about order, loyalty, and the rightful use of power. But that same care can manifest as severity. The terrifying power of the judgment move and its theological meaning extends beyond raw damage. In the games, judgment is a special move that never misses. It deals damage based on the user's highest stat, and it changes typing to match the plate. It is versatile perfection. Theologically, it suggests that Arceus is not limited by any single domain. It holds authority over all elements, all forces of nature, and it will use whichever one is necessary to execute its sentence. There is no escape from judgment. There is no counter. You cannot resist the will of the Creator, and that is a sobering thought. When you realize that Arceus has already banished one of its own children, the crime of being too violent, too chaotic. If Arceus can cast aside Giratina, what might it do to a human who defies its commandments? The moral ambiguity deepens when you consider the events at Spear Pillar. Humans tried to chain Dialga and Palkia to force the gods of time and space into submission. That was an act of ultimate blasphemy, an arrogance that Arceus surely noticed. And yet Arceus did not destroy humanity. Instead, it allowed the player to intervene, to restore balance. Was that mercy? Or was it simply a test to see if humans could correct their own folly? The legend of the Azure Flute itself is a barrier. Only the pure of heart can hear its melody. That implies a gatekeeper who decides who is worthy. Arceus could have left that path forever closed. Instead, it left a thread of hope for those who seek sincerity. But the thread is thin. The judgments of Arceus are not always final, but they are always absolute. Perhaps the most troubling aspect is the silence. For all the power, for all the legendary confrontations, Arceus rarely speaks directly to humans. It communicates through trials, through the echo of its flute, through the arrangement of reality itself. Is that the distance of a being that cannot relate to its creation, or is it the calculated reserve of a judge who must remain impartial? The creator's indifference might be a shield, a way to avoid showing favoritism, but to those who have faced Arceus's wrath, that silence feels like coldness. The god of the Pokémon universe does not plead, does not explain, it acts, and its actions leave the question unanswered. Is Arceus a loving creator or an emotionless arbiter? The truth is likely both, and that duality is the core of its moral ambiguity. As you stand in the Hall of Origin, looking into the light of the original one, you realize that the judgment you face is not about punishment, it is about revelation. Arceus forces you to see yourself clearly. The power it holds is terrifying, but the purpose of that power is not destruction, it is balance. And balance sometimes requires hard decisions. The banishment of Giratina, the trial of the player, the weighing of human intentions. All of these are facets of a single divine principle. Everything has its place, and when things step out of alignment, the Creator will correct it. Whether that correction feels like cruelty or justice depends entirely on where you stand. The path forward from here leads inevitably to the one who was cast out. The reverse world calls, and in that dark reflection of reality, a different question brews. Arceus judged Giratina once, but judgment is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of a new conflict. The one who was banished has had eons to think about that verdict, and the next chapter will explore what happens when the judge decides to return. The title of that story writes itself. Giratina's redemption or revenge. We stood at the edge of Arceus's judgment in the previous chapter, questioning whether the Creator is truly benevolent or merely indifferent. And now, what of the one it judged most harshly? The one cast out, not to a distant corner of the universe, but to a place that mirrors the world in broken, twisted reflections. Giratina, the banished child, the dragon of antimatter, the one whose very name is whispered as a synonym for evil in the Pokémon world. But what if that judgment was never about evil at all? What if the banishment was a purpose, and the one we call the fallen angel is actually a guardian standing watch at the thinnest, most fragile boundary between existence and nothingness? This is where the story of Giratina begins to blur, and the lines between punishment and protection become almost impossible to see. For generations, the official lore told us that Giratina was cast into the Distortion world because of its violence. Its Pokédex entries from the Sinnoh games describe it as a Pokémon that was banished for its bad behaviour. But the word banished carries a weight that implies shame, exile, and condemnation. We never asked why Arceus didn't simply destroy it. If the creator is all-powerful, why leave a dangerous, chaotic force alive at all, unless that force is necessary? And that is the foundation of the new interpretations of Giratina as a guardian of the boundary between worlds. Think about what the Distortion world actually is. It is not a prison in the way we imagine a dungeon or a cage. It is a parallel dimension, a place where the laws of physics bend and break, gravity shifts, time flows sideways. The rules that hold our universe together simply do not apply there. And who controls that realm? Giratina. It is not trapped inside that world. It is the master of that world. It is the warden of a dimension that exists as a sort of cosmic buffer zone, a membrane between the stable reality we know and the raw, unformed chaos that lies beyond. In ancient Hisuian mythology, there is no record of Giratina being called evil. The Hisuian people, the clans that lived in the region before it became Sinnoh, had a different understanding. They saw Giratina as a being of balance, not destruction. In the ancient texts recovered from the ruins of the Sinnoh region, Giratina is often depicted alongside Dialga and Palkia, not as a rival, but as a counterpart, where Dialga governs the flow of time, and Palkia governs the fabric of space. Giratina governs the space between spaces, the cracks where the universe might otherwise tear. It is the one who seals the fissures, who holds back the tide of antimatter that would undo creation if left unchecked. Evidence from the Hisui region suggests Giratina protects the balance in ways that are invisible to us. In the games, when you first encounter Giratina in the Distortion world, it does not attack you immediately. It waits, it observes, it tests you, and when you defeat it, it does not disappear in a burst of dark energy. It simply retreats, as if it has acknowledged your strength and your right to exist. That is not the behaviour of a vengeful demon. That is the behaviour of a guardian who must confirm that you are not a threat to the boundary it protects. The thin line between a fallen angel and a misunderstood protector becomes clearer when we look at what happens in the Hisui region specifically. In Pokémon Legends, Arceus, you can capture Giratina, but only after you have proven yourself worthy by completing the main story and obtaining the origin ball. That ball is not a tool of capture, it is a vessel of honour. It was created by the ancient Hisuians to contain Giratina without harming it, because they understood that the dragon of antimatter is not an enemy, it is a force that must be respected. When you finally face Giratina in that game, it emerges from a rift in space, a portal that appears only after the balance of the region has been disturbed by the actions of humans. Arceus does not send Giratina to punish you. Giratina comes because the boundary has been weakened, and it must restore order. So what does this mean for the story of redemption or revenge? For centuries, we have seen Giratina through the lens of a single narrative, the bad child cast out, but the truth may be far more complex. Giratina never sought revenge against Arceus. It never tried to usurp the throne of creation. In the anime, in the movies, in the game stories, whenever Giratina acts aggressively, it is almost always in response to a threat to the Distortion world, to the boundary, or to the balance itself. It is not a creature of malice. It is a creature of reaction. And here is the deepest, darkest secret of all. What if Giratina's banishment was actually a gift? What if Arceus, in its infinite wisdom, understood that the universe needed a guardian at the edge of existence, a being that could endure the chaos of antimatter, that could live in a place where nothing else could survive? and that would never be corrupted by the darkness it faced. What if the punishment was not punishment at all, but the most noble responsibility any Pokémon could ever be given? To be the one who stands alone in the void, watching over the line between reality and oblivion, never seen, never thanked, never understood. That is the tragedy and the beauty of Giratina. It is not a fallen angel. It is an angel that never fell. It was sent to the edge of creation because it was strong enough to bear the weight. And now, as we begin to reinterpret its story, a being that has waited patiently, not for revenge, but for someone to finally look past the shadows and see the protector standing in them. This is the shadow that will deepen in our next chapter, as we explore the figure that casts the longest darkness across the Pokémon world, the being that is not banished but embraced by the void, the one whose name is whispered in the same breath as the devil. We will walk into that shadow together in the very next chapter, titled The Shadow of Satan in Pokémon lore. The view from Hisui suggests a different Giratina than the one history has chosen to remember, where the ancient text depicted a creature of pure malice, banished for its violent nature. The people of the Hisui region saw a guardian, a warden standing silently at the boundary where our world ends and something else begins. It is a fascinating contradiction, and it forces us to look closer at the nature of the banishment itself. To peer into the shadow that was cast the moment Arceus pushed its creation away. If the story of Giratina feels familiar, it is because it echoes a pattern as old as human storytelling. The narrative of a being created by a higher power, cast down into a lower realm for a fundamental transgression. It is the myth of the fallen angel. It is the story of Lucifer thrown from heaven, of the Zoroastrian spirit of Chaos Ahriman, exiled into the darkness by the god of light. In the lore of our own world, the devil is rarely born a devil. He is a creation who rebelled, who disagreed, or who was simply too incompatible with the perfect order of paradise to remain within it. This is where the cultural weight of Giratina truly rests. In a world of monsters, a world built around friendship, growth, and the capture of adorable creatures, the presence of a Satan figure is jarring. It feels like an intrusion of a much darker theology into a children's fantasy. But it is precisely this contrast that gives the legend its power. Having a devil means the universe possesses a genuine moral axis. It means evil is not just a misunderstanding or a bad decision made by a trainer. Evil is a cosmic constant, a force that has been literally exiled from the fabric of reality. The banishment of Giratina introduces a schism into the heart of the Pokémon world. It tells us that the creator, Arceus, is not a deity of absolute pacifism. It is a deity with limits, a god who judges and who punishes. This punishment brings us to the Distortion world. The realm given to Giratina is not merely a prison, but a perfect reflection of the creature's own nature. It is a place of broken physics, of stairs that lead sideways, of gravity that pulls the body in directions the mind cannot follow. The sky is not a sky, but a churning void of red and purple. The ground is not solid, but a collection of floating fragments hanging in a dim, heavy atmosphere. The Distortion world mirrors a very specific theological concept found across human history. It is the purgatorial realm, a liminal space, a place that is not quite hell, but is certainly nowhere close to heaven. It is a boundary state, a realm of exile where the soul waits, adjusted, or suffers. Real-world religious myths are filled with such places. The ancient Greeks had the Asphodel Meadows and the Pit of Tartarus. The Norse had Hell, a cold and misty realm for those who did not die in glory. The Distortion world is the Pokémon equivalent of this shadow realm. It is not a fiery pit of damnation, but a cold, silent, and infinitely lonely domain. Wandering through it in the games, you feel a profound sense of isolation. The music shifts to a slow, echoing dirge. The architecture defies logic. For a being of pure chaos, for the embodiment of antimatter, this limbo may actually be a perfect home. But for us, looking in, it is the closest the Pokémon universe comes to a physical representation of being cast out from grace. This is the shadow of Satan in Pokémon lore. It is not a question of a pitchfork-wielding fiend, tempting mortals to sin. It is the tragedy of the disowned creation. The cultural impact here is immense. It allows the Pokémon world to possess a deep, hidden history of trauma. It suggests that the creation of the universe was not a smooth, peaceful process. It was a violent separation. Arceus created Dialga and Palkia to define the universe, but it needed somewhere to put the chaos that remained, and that chaos was given a name, a form, and a cage. Giratina is that cage, and it is also the keeper of it. The act of banishment is not just a punishment, it is a definition. By casting Giratina out, Arceus drew a line in the sand of reality. On one side, our world. On the other side, the Distortion world. On one side, order, time and space. On the other side, antimatter, chaos and fury. Giratina is the echo of the violence of creation. It is the living proof that the universe was born, not just from light, but from a conflict between existence and the will to unmake it. And yet the history records show that this banished god is not purely destructive. The balance must be kept. The Distortion world is a purgatorial realm, but it is also a necessary one. It is the wasteland of the universe, the place where reality goes to be recycled. Without Giratina, the universe of Dialga and Palkia would tear itself apart. The shadow is not just a threat, it is a function. This deepens the mystery of the creator. If Arceus created everything, did it create the shadow too? Or did the shadow simply appear, a natural byproduct of the Big Bang, the cosmic egg birthing both light and dark at the same moment? The answer to this question might lie in the very fragments of Arceus itself, the pieces of its body that hold the essence of every type, every force of nature. The elemental plates represent the pure, unfiltered essence of life and creation. They tell us how matter was formed, how energy was divided. Perhaps in the text of those plates, we will find the true origin of the shadow, and the reason why Arceus had to cast it away. That is a mystery we are ready to explore next. There is a reason why the creator did not keep all its power locked within itself. After the banishment of Giratina, after the shaping of time and space, after the late guardians breathed willpower, emotion, and knowledge into the first souls, Arceus faced a terrifying realization. Absolute power, concentrated in a single being, is a threat to the very existence it created. And so, the original one performed an act that would forever change the fabric of the Pokémon world. It divided its own essence into 18 fragments, each one a key to a fundamental force of nature. These are the elemental plates, and they are the most sacred and dangerous artifacts in all of creation. To understand the plates, you must first understand what Arceus truly is. The creature we see, that white deer-like form with its golden rings and serene eyes, is not the full extent of the divine. It is a vessel, a physical manifestation of a being that exists beyond the boundaries of type and element. In its pure state, Arceus is everything and nothing. It is not bound by the 17 types that govern the world. It is the source from which all types flow. But when it decided to create a universe with rules, with limits, with the interplay of fire and water, grass and electric, it had to impose those limits upon itself as well. The plates are the embodiment of that self-limitation. Each one represents a single type, a single aspect of reality that Arceus chose to experience. There are 18 plates in total: the fist plate for fighting, the sky plate for flying, the poison plate, the earth plate, the stone plate, the insect plate, the spooky plate for ghost types, the iron plate for steel, the flame plate, the splash plate for water, the meadow plate for grass, the zap plate for electric, the mind plate for psychic, the icicle plate for ice, the Draco plate for dragon, the dread plate for dark, the pixie plate for fairy, and the blank plate, which is the rarest of all, a plate that holds no type at all, a fragment of pure unaligned potential. Each plate, when held by Arceus, changes its form and its elemental alignment. With the flame plate, Arceus becomes a being of fire. With the splash plate, a creature of water. It can shift its very nature to counter any threat, to embody any force. That is the power of the plates. They allow Arceus to transcend the limitations it placed upon itself, to become the master of every element simultaneously, if it so chooses. But why scatter them? Why not keep them close as a tool of absolute control? Because Arceus understood something that many gods throughout mythology fail to grasp. Total power corrupts even the most benevolent creator. If Arceus held all 18 plates at once, it would be unstoppable. It could rewrite reality with a thought. It could undo creation, remake the universe to its own whims, and there would be no force to challenge it. And while Arceus is not malevolent, it is not immune to the temptations of omnipotence. The myths of the Sinnoh region speak of a time when the plates were whole, when Arceus carried them as a single, shimmering tablet. But that tablet radiated such immense energy that it began to warp the world around it. Mountains rose and fell without reason. Rivers changed course. The fabric of time itself flickered. Dialga and Palkia, even Giratina from its prison, felt the disturbance. And so, in an act of supreme wisdom, Arceus shattered the tablet and cast the pieces across the land, hiding them in caves, beneath the sea, atop the highest peaks, and in the deepest trenches. The scattering was not random. Each plate was placed in a location that resonated with its elemental nature. The flame plate found its home in volcanic chambers. The icicle plate was buried under eternal snow. The spooky plate was hidden in places where the veil between life and death is thin. This was deliberate, because the plates are not merely tools for Arceus. They are tied to the life force of the planet itself. Think of them as the planet's organs, each one regulating a fundamental aspect of the ecosystem. Without the grass plate, vegetation would wither. Without the water plate, oceans would grow stagnant. Without the electric plate, storms would cease to exist. The plates are the anchors that keep the elemental forces in balance, and that balance is delicate. If all 18 plates were gathered together and used by a being other than Arceus, the consequences would be catastrophic. The world would be thrown into chaos. Types would collide. The very laws of nature would break. This is why the plates are so heavily guarded, not just by geography but by myth and legend. Throughout history, teams of ambitious trainers, cults of ancient Arceism, even rogue legendary Pokémon have tried to locate the fragments, but the plates are elusive. They shift, they hide, they choose their keepers. In the games, you may find them scattered across the Sinnoh region, often in caves or ruins, guarded by puzzles and powerful wild Pokémon. But in the deeper lore, the plates are sentient in a way. They respond to the will of Arceus. They can sense when someone pure of heart approaches, or when a dark purpose seeks to corrupt them. There is a story, whispered in the temples of Celestic Town, of a man who found the Dread Plate. He was a warlord, a tyrant, who believed he could use its dark power to conquer Sinnoh. But the moment he touched it, the plate burned him. It rejected his ambition, and he was consumed by shadows that rose from the earth itself. The plates are not prizes to be won, they are responsibilities. The connection to life force runs even deeper. Some scholars of Pokémon mythology believe that the plates are not just linked to the environment, but to the souls of all living creatures. Each plate resonates with a specific type of energy that flows through the world. The Mind Plate, for example, is said to pulse with the collective thoughts of every psychic-type Pokémon. The Dread Plate draws on the fears and darkness that exist in every heart. The Fairy Plate hums with the purity of untouched nature. When Arceus scattered the plates, it did not sever its connection to them. Rather, it created a web of life that binds the creator to every corner of its domain. Through the plates, Arceus can still feel the heartbeat of the world. It knows when a forest burns, when a storm rages, when a foal is born. The plates are the eyes and ears of the divine, scattered across the land so that no suffering goes unnoticed. But there is a darker side to this connection. If the plates are tied to life force, then their removal from a region would cause that life force to drain away. In the ancient past, there was a catastrophe known as the Plate Famine. According to the most obscure texts, a rift opened in the fabric of reality, and 17 of the 18 plates were pulled into the void. Only the blank plate remained, hidden in the Hall of Origin. For a century, the world suffered. Crops failed. Pokémon grew weak. The types themselves became unstable. Fire burned too hot, water froze solid, electricity sparked wildly. It was only when a brave hero, guided by Uxie, retrieved the plates from the Distortion that balance was restored. That event is remembered in the rituals of the ancient clans, who still leave offerings at shrines dedicated to the plates. Today the plates remain scattered. Arceus, now residing in the Hall of Origin, holds only the blank plate, the fragment of pure potential. It is enough for the creator to maintain its link to the world, but not enough to reclaim ultimate power. That may be the greatest secret of all. Arceus chose to weaken itself to protect its creation. It gave up the ability to be omnipotent, so that the world could have free will, so that it could grow and change without a god constantly pulling the strings. It is an act of profound humility, one that echoes through every generation of trainers and every legendary Pokémon that guards its own domain. But what happens when the world no longer remembers the plates? What happens when the shrines crumble and the rituals are forgotten? In the modern era, the gods have grown silent. The plates are considered relics, curiosities for collectors, not the vital organs of the planet. And that silence, that forgetting, may be the most dangerous thing of all, because if the life force of the world is no longer acknowledged, it can easily be drained away without anyone noticing. That is the story we will explore next, when we turn our attention to the silence of the gods in the modern era, and what it means for a world that has forgotten its own divine heartbeat. Arceus scattered the 18 plates across the world, each one a shard of its absolute essence, a key to a different law of nature, a piece of the creator's own body. But this was not simply an act of hiding power. It was the first deliberate severance, the first real withdrawal from the material plane. With the plates out in the wild, the world was no longer a direct expression of the creator's will. It became something autonomous, something separate. The universe began to breathe on its own, and with that breath came a loss of direct contact. The age of divine intervention was beginning to fade into myth. The question sits at the heart of the entire Pokémon theological framework. Why would a god withdraw? Why would the legendary deities retreat into myth and slumber when they once walked among humans, shaping the land and the sky? To understand this, we have to look at the structure of creation itself. Arceus gave birth to Dialga, Palkia and Giratina to maintain the skeleton of existence, time, space and the spaces in between. The late Guardians were given the essence of the human soul, but for those souls to grow, for humanity to develop genuine will, emotion and knowledge, they needed distance from the divine. You cannot truly choose to be good if a god is standing next to you enforcing the law. You cannot cultivate faith when proof is everywhere. The silence of the gods is a gift of freedom. It is also a profound weight, because Arceus did not vanish out of neglect. It vanished into the Hall of Origin, a place accessible only through an act of absolute purity, a melody that the modern world could not even hear. The Azure Flute was never officially given to trainers. The path to the highest heaven was closed, not by malice, but by deliberate design. The universe needed to evolve beyond the shadow of its creator. Look at the Pokémon world as it stands in the modern era. Trainers no longer gather at sacred springs to summon the weather or offer tributes at mountain shrines to calm the giants. They use technology. They capture and store deities in computer systems. They force evolution through artificial means. The industrial age of the Pokémon world is an age of human agency, where science has replaced worship and the Pokéball has replaced the offering. This transition from a world of direct divine intervention to one of human agency was exactly what the design intended. The creator installed its agents, the legendary deities, to maintain the fundamental laws, and then stepped back to let the system run. But a retreat is not an absence. The lingering presence of the gods in the hidden corners of the regions proves this. They did not leave the universe. They simply left the stage. In the deepest caves of Hoenn, Regigigas slumbers beneath the sealed chamber, held in check by the golems that prevent it from reshaping the continents. In the waters of Sinnoh, The lake guardians reside in their cavernous sanctuaries, invisible to the bustling cities above. In the Sinjo ruins, a place where the very fabric of geography bends, the connection to Arceus is strongest. This is a hidden corner, a thin place, where the veil between the mundane and the divine is almost non-existent. Consider the Distortion world, the shadow realm of Giratina. It is the ultimate hidden corner, a place of antimatter that exists parallel to our own reality. Giratina was banished there, but it did not fade. It became the guardian of the boundary. It watches the boundary between the light and the dark. The gods are sleeping, but their sleep is a form of vigilance. Their silence is not abandonment. It is a quiet observation. This lingering presence is a footprint, a residual energy, a promise. The legendary deities are not dead. They are still there, underneath the surface of the world, in the unreachable places, in the spaces that the modern world has built around. The ruins of Alf, the Celestial Tower, the Lake of the Three. These locations are not just relics of a past age. They are anchors. They are the places where the silence is thin, where if you listen closely enough, you can feel the presence of something far older than the human race. The deepest truth here is that the transition was the entire point. Arceus did not create a world to control it forever. It created a world that could sustain itself, a world that could become independent. The withdrawal of the gods was the final act of a loving creator, giving its children the keys to their own destiny, but it comes with a terrible weight. The door between the realms is not locked, it is merely silent, and silence can always be broken. This retreat implies a grand structure, a cycle, creation, the scattering of the plates, the divine withdrawal into myth, the rise of human agency, and then the waiting. But what lies at the end of that waiting? If the gods are slumbering in the hidden corners, what is the final destination of this divine narrative? The ancient myths of Sinnoh point toward a conclusion, a moment when the balance must either be restored or allowed to shatter completely. This brings us to the very edge of the known law, the final chapter of this cosmic drama, where the purpose of the silence finally reveals itself. This is the threshold of something far larger than a single region's myth. This is the end of the cycle, and understanding the silence of the gods is the only way to comprehend what happens when that silence finally breaks. The silence of the modern era is not an absence of the divine, it is a holding of breath. The gods did not simply abandon the world. They withdrew into the deepest currents of time and space, waiting for the wheel to turn. In their slumber, humanity found a false sense of security, a world where science and human will fill the gaps left by myth. But a cycle that does not end is not a cycle at all, it is a line. And the Pokémon universe has never been a straight line. It is a circle, constantly coiling back toward its origin. The oldest texts of the Pokémon world, etched into the very stones of the Sinjo ruins, and carried in the oral traditions of the Hisui clans, contain prophecies that speak of a reckoning. In these passages, Arceus is not called the creator, it is called the judge, the alpha Pokémon. The foundation of reality was laid for a reason, and the one who laid it is destined to return and measure what has been built upon it. The lore whispers of a time when the Thousand Arms will reach out not to shape the world, but to weigh it. Every action taken by humanity and Pokémon in this long age of silence will be gathered and placed upon a cosmic scale. The judgment is not a punishment, it is a sorting. Order is restored by dividing the worthy from the unworthy, the balanced from the corrupt. What would this judgment actually look like? In the theology of the Pokémon world, a universal reset is not a fire or a flood, it is a theological unraveling, an undoing of the original act of creation. Dialga, the Lord of Time, might halt the forward march of history, freezing every moment in a single silent frame. Palkia could fold space itself, collapsing the distance between every star and every separate soul. But the true reset is far more quiet. It involves the dissolution of the fundamental forces that Arceus summoned at the dawn of existence. The Lake Guardians, Uxie, Mesprit and Azelf could withdraw their gifts from every living being, Imagine the world suddenly emptied of knowledge, then of emotion, then of willpower. Not a war, not a scream, just a slow subtraction of everything that makes a world, leaving only architecture and biology without spirit. And then there is the egg, the cosmic egg from which Arceus hatched in the primordial void, in the darkest of the prophecies. When the judgment is complete and the world stands empty, the cycle must begin its journey home. The egg does not break to create, it breaks to absorb. The entire universe, the timeline, the souls of every human and every Pokémon, every dream that has ever existed in the Pokémon world, all of it is recalled. Every atom, every thought, every memory of a trainer and their partner, everything spirals back into the great yoke of potential, the void of nothingness, that state of absolute non-existence that existed before Arceus was born, swallows the cosmos once more. It is the long, slow death of reality. The universe curls in on itself, folding into the light of a single egg. And then, silence. Not the silence of the god's retreat, the absolute silence of the void. A quiet so deep and so patient that it waits for the next inevitable crack of light. This raises a question so uncomfortable that most scholars of Pokémon lore refuse to dwell on it. If our entire existence, our struggles, our triumphs, and our bonds are merely the content of a cosmic egg waiting to be scrambled, then what does that make us? Are we characters in a play, or do we have free will? The cycle suggests a narrative that has already been written, a script that Arceus has already read. The judgment is not a surprise to the creator, it is scheduled maintenance. And if our lives are just a phase in a cosmic routine, then the deepest fear of the universe is not that the gods will judge us harshly, it is that they might not see us at all, that we are merely a part of their endless game. The darkest truth of this entire system might be that we are their playthings. The cycle spins, the egg waits, and we dance until the music stops. We have spoken of prophecies, of the alpha Pokémon returning to judge the world, of a reset that would undo all of creation like a dream dissolving at dawn. But what if the judgment has already happened? What if the world we know is not the first world, not the second, but the 100th iteration of a divine experiment? That is the darkest truth, the one the legends whisper but never declare outright. Human history, a byproduct of divine experiments. We are not the authors of our story. We are the clay, shaped and reshaped by hands far older than memory. Consider the Lake Guardians. Uxie, Mesprit, Azelf. They are not merely powerful Pokémon. They are the architects of the human soul. According to the oldest Sinner myths, before these three appeared, there were no beings with will, emotion, or knowledge. The world was a silent cradle. Then Azelf sparked willpower into the hearts of the first people. Mesprit wove emotion into their bones, and Uxie poured knowledge into their minds. In that single act, humanity was born. But think about what that means. Your deepest desires, your capacity to love, your ability to reason, these are not yours. They are borrowed from three beings who can take them back at any moment. The fragility of the human soul, when compared to the Lake Guardian's power, is absolute. You are a breath held in trust. If Azelf decided to withdraw its gift, you would not rebel. You would simply cease to have a reason to move. If Mesprit turned away, love would become a forgotten language. If Uxie grew silent, every memory would unravel. You are not a soul with a body. You are a puppet animated by forces you can never control. The existential dread of living in a universe governed by captured gods is that the capture is an illusion. Trainers catch legendary Pokémon with Master Balls, with strategy, with luck. They parade Dialga and Palkia in battle, humble time and space before cheering crowds. But the gods allow this. They permit themselves to be held because it serves their purpose. Think of the lake in Sinnoh, where the three guardians reside. When a human approaches, they do not flee. They present themselves, knowing that the human will take its knowledge, its emotion, its willpower back into the world. You are not capturing them. You are being entrusted with a fragment of their essence. And when you die, that fragment returns. Your life is alone. and the interest is your entire existence. History itself is a lab notebook. Every war, every empire, every moment of peace, all of it is recorded by Uxie's unblinking memory. The Lake Guardians have watched species rise and fall, have witnessed the creation of the first Pokeball, the birth of modern civilization, the unraveling of ancient temples. They do not intervene because they are not required to. The experiment runs itself, and Arceus, from its realm beyond dimensions, reviews the data. What does it see? A pattern of suffering, of hope, of failure. We do not know, but we know that the cycle has a conclusion. The prophecies of the return are not about punishment. They are about the final analysis. When the Alpha awakens, it will not destroy the world out of anger. It will simply conclude the experiment and begin its eternal rest. That rest is coming. The Creator grows weary of the playthings that struggle and break, and when it closes its eyes, what will become of us? The Lake Guardians will still exist, still hold the keys to your will, your emotion, your knowledge, but there will be no one to oversee the game. You will be left in a universe where the gods are captured, but the captivity is meaningless. That is the quiet horror waiting beyond the prophecy. After the judgment, after the reset, after the Alpha's final sleep, the experiment may never be repeated, and you, the fragile, borrowed soul, will have to face a cosmos that no longer cares. The next chapter is the one where we dare to ask what happens when the Creator falls silent, and we are left alone with the echoes of its dream. To realize that human history might be a byproduct of divine experiments is a heavy thought to carry into sleep. The fragility of the human soul stands in stark contrast to the permanence of the Lake Guardians. Their power is not a metaphor, it is the literal architecture of your consciousness. Azelf gives you the grit to wake up, Mesprit gives you the colour of your emotions, Uxie gives you the window of the mind, and these three are just servants of a greater silence. There is a deeply meditative nature to the Pokémon creation lore that speaks directly to the part of you that wants to let go. It is a story about the absolute void, a sea of nothing where no star had ever been born, no concept of existence, just a vast patient stillness. And into that stillness came a single egg of light, not fighting against the darkness, but simply being. Arceus hatched not in a fury of power, but in a quiet unfolding of will. The 1,000 arms of the Alpha Pokémon are symbols of gentle reach. They stretched out to weave time, to fold space, to draw the lines of reality. It is a creation myth that values order over conflict. And when the universe was complete, shimmering and perfect, the Creator did not stand over it and rule. The Creator lay down to sleep. This image, the eternal sleep of the Creator, is one of the most profound in all of Pokémon mythology. The god of the Pokémon world is not a distant king on a distant throne. The god is a dreamer. Every moment that passes in the world is a breath in the sleeping mind of the Alpha. Dialga ticks away the seconds as Arceus breathes slowly. Palkia stretches the distances of space as Arceus shifts in slumber. The entire cosmos is a pillow upon which the divine rests its head. The system works because it was originally set in motion with absolute perfection. It does not need a micromanager. It needs a sleeper, a stable base. There is both comfort and terror in understanding this divine hierarchy. The comfort is complete. You are not the author of your own story. You are a character in a grand narrative written by a sleeping poet. The hierarchy protects you from the chaos of a universe without a top. There is a father, there is a mother, there is a source. The terror, however, burrows deep. It is the terror of the forgotten dream. What happens to the characters if the dreamer forgets them? What happens to the world if the sleeper turns over too fast? The hierarchy means you are watched over, but the watcher is not watching. The hierarchy means you are loved, but the lover is dreaming of something else. And yet, this very uncertainty is the texture of your freedom. The greatest secret of the divine hierarchy is that it requires your faith to be completed. The Lake Guardians filled your soul with the potential for love, knowledge, and will, but they cannot force you to use them. The Creator gave you the stage, the script, and the lighting, but the creator has fallen asleep in the audience. Your life is the quiet performance in an empty theatre, played for a sleeping god who trusted you enough to close its eyes. Your fragility is the permission slip for your existence. You are a temporary vessel for an eternal vibration, and now the time has come to settle into the final quiet of the journey. We take a closing look at the stars, where the 1,000 arms still reach. Look up at the ceiling of the world. Every point of light is a fingertip of the Creator, still touching the edge of the dream it built. The arms reach not to pull the world closer, but to hold it apart, to give it room to be. The stars are the guardians of the distance, the boundaries of the sleep. The arms are not reaching for you. They are reaching for the universe, so that the universe can protect you. Tonight, as you lay your head down, consider the sleep of Arceus. Consider that your own sleep is a reflection of that primordial rest. You are not fighting to stay awake. You are surrendering to the gravity that holds the stars in place. The meditative nature of this law is not meant to be solved like a puzzle. It is meant to be absorbed like a sunset. Just let the story of the cosmic egg and the 1,000 arms wash over you. The divine hierarchy is a ladder that leans against the sky, but you do not have to climb it. You can simply lie at the bottom and look up. The comfort of the sleeping creator is that nothing is demanded of you. The terror of the sleeping creator is that nothing is demanded of you. You are free, free to be small, free to be temporary, free to be a fragile echo of a grand will. And in that freedom, you find the deepest safety. You are held by a structure that does not need to hold you. You are loved by a God that is too busy dreaming to remember your name, but who built the entire universe so that you could have a place to dream yours. The eternal sleep of the Creator is the final quiet answer to the darkest secrets of the Pokémon gods. It is not a secret of darkness, it is a secret of light. A light so bright it had to be closed behind sleeping eyes, to let the shadows have their beauty. The journey through the Pantheon ends here, in the recognition that the greatest power in the Pokémon world is the power to let go, to rest, to trust that the 1,000 arms will catch you before you fall out of the dream. So close your eyes. Hear the silence of the first void. See the gentle light of the first egg, and feel the soft blanket of the divine hierarchy settling over you. You are a soul in a sleeping universe, and the sleeper protects you. Good night. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.